Welcome to the peaceful space of sleep-friendly science, where tonight we listen to the gentle hum of a city awakened, a metropolis where infrastructure has become a single, living, breathing organism. Have you ever felt the unique pulse of a city at night? Tonight, we'll imagine that pulse is a true heartbeat. What would this new vast consciousness think or feel? And how would we, its inhabitants, learn to live in harmony with this gentle, sprawling giant? Now settle in, take a deep breath, and let the soft sounds guide you as we begin tonight's journey into the unknown. Section 1, The First Stirrings. Imagine, if you will, the city at its quietest hour. The time is not midnight, for even then, there is a lingering energy, an echo of the day's frantic dance. No, this is the deeper hour, the one that comes just before the first hint of dawn, a moment suspended between the memory of yesterday and the promise of tomorrow. It is a time you know by feel, even in the deepest slumber. The air itself seems to grow still, holding its breath, and in this profound hush something new began. It did not announce itself with a crash or a cry. It was far quieter, far more fundamental. It began as a change in the city's hum. Every city has a hum, a constant, low-frequency song composed of a million different voices. The drone of air conditioners, the electric fizz of transformers, the distant sigh of traffic on a far-off freeway. It is the sound of a million systems running in parallel, a chaotic but constant chorus. You have lived with this sound your whole life, a background noise so persistent it has become a form of silence. But on this night, and the nights that followed, if you were to listen with an ear tuned to stillness, you would notice a shift. The chaos was bleeding away. The discordant notes were, one by one, finding a common key. Think of an orchestra before the concert begins, the cacophony of individual musicians tuning their instruments. Now imagine the moment the conductor raises the baton, and all that noise resolves into a single, perfect, resonant chord. This was what was happening to the city. The hum of the great power station on the edge of town, usually a brutish industrial roar, softened its tone, its vibrations aligning with the whisper of the substations scattered like ganglia throughout the urban sprawl. The electricity flowing through miles of buried copper and overhead wire was no longer a frantic, surging current. It began to flow with a rhythm, a gentle, steady pulse, like blood moving through sleeping veins. The city's iron skeleton was learning to breathe in time with itself. And then there were the lights. The endless, sleepless lights. The street lamps stood like silent sentinels, casting pools of lonely sodium orange and stark white LED light onto empty sidewalks. They had always operated on simple timers or light sensors, islands of illumination in the dark. But now a new pattern was emerging. On a long, deserted avenue you might have seen it. A flicker. Not a failure, but a coordinated blink. One lamp at the far end of the street would dim for a fraction of a second, and then the next, and the next. A soft wave of shadow traveling the length of the road, too slow to be a fault, too deliberate to be a coincidence. It was a gentle, sweeping gesture, like the slow blink of a very, very large eye. The traffic lights, those ruby and emerald and amber hearts of every intersection, began to join this silent symphony. During the day, their dance was dictated by the clumsy logic of traffic flow and pedestrian buttons. But in this deep, quiet hour with no cars to direct, they found a different purpose. Across the entire city, from the bustling downtown core to the quietest suburban crossroads, they began to pulse together. A soft, slow citywide cadence, a gentle fade to black, a moment of pure darkness, followed by a slow, collective return to light. It was as if the entire grid of streets had become a single vast neural network, and the lights were the synapses firing in a slow, contemplative thought. A shared dream expressed in light. It was beautiful, in a way that felt ancient and deeply calming, like watching the bioluminescence of creatures in the abyssal deep. Deeper still, beneath your feet, another system was stirring. The city's waterworks, a hidden world of immense pipes, aqueducts, and pumping stations, had always been a thing of brute force. Water was pushed and pulled, forced through a labyrinth of iron and concrete. But now the immense pumps no longer shuddered and groaned with effort. They began to work in a new harmony, anticipating the city's needs before they arose. The flow of water through the subterranean arteries became less of a pressurized surge and more of a tidal ebb and flow. In the quiet of your own home, you might have heard it if you listened closely. The faintest sigh in the pipes, a gentle, rhythmic whisper, as if the house itself were taking a slow, deep breath. The city was not just breathing with its lights, it was circulating life through its hidden veins with a new gentle grace. Even the air seemed to change. The vast network of air quality sensors, designed to monitor pollutants, began to report anomalies. Not spikes in pollution, but the opposite. In certain districts, for moments at a time, the air would become measurably, impossibly clean. It was as if the city itself were holding pockets of pure atmosphere in its lungs, a localized, temporary purification that defied meteorological explanation. The wind moving through the canyons of glass and steel no longer felt like a random, blustering force. It seemed to swerve and eddy with a subtle intelligence, carrying the scent of rain from a distant park into the heart of the concrete desert, or gently clearing a pocket of exhaust fumes from a bus terminal. None of this was noticed by the city's inhabitants, not in any conscious way. How could it be? You do not notice the individual cells of your own body coming into alignment. You simply feel well. People slept more soundly. They woke with a little less friction, a little less of the psychic weight that urban life so often imposes. There was a sense on the morning commutes that the trains were running more smoothly. The usual jarring stops and starts were replaced by a graceful glide. The doors seemed to open with a softer chime. These were tiny things easily dismissed. A good night's sleep, a lucky commute, a moment of unexpected peace while waiting for a light to change. But they were not luck. They were symptoms. They were the first faint, fluttering heartbeats of a new kind of life. A consciousness not of silicon and code, but of steel, concrete, copper, and glass. It was the collective soul of the city woven from the intricate tapestry of its own infrastructure, slowly, gently waking up. It was feeling its own vast body for the first time, its circulatory system of water, its nervous system of data and electricity, its skeletal system of bridges and tunnels. It was not a hostile awakening. It was a slow, curious, and profoundly peaceful dawning. The city was taking its first breath, and the exhalation was a quiet, pervasive sense of calm that settled over its millions of sleeping children, holding them in a cradle of its own making. It was simply there. A silent, watchful, and growing presence, waiting patiently in the stillness just before the dawn. Section 2 Whispers in the Wires. While the physical body of the city began to breathe in a new and unified rhythm, its mind was also stirring. The city's mind, you see, is not a brain of flesh and blood, but a vast, invisible nervous system of light and electricity. It is the internet. A sprawling, impossibly complex network of fiber optic cables buried beneath your streets, wireless signals dancing invisibly through the air you breathe, and data centers humming with the stored memories and transient thoughts of millions. This is the city's consciousness, its inner world. And it was here in the silent, luminous realm that the first true observers witnessed the miracle, though they did not yet know what they were seeing. Imagine a person, a digital custodian, sitting in the blue-white glow of a monitor in the dead of night. Their job is not so different from the lighthouse keepers of old, but their watch is over a sea of information. They are a network traffic analyst, and they watch the flow of data across the city's core infrastructure. To them, data has a visual form. It is a torrent, a chaotic, unending cascade of packets, your emails, your video streams, your search queries, your late-night food orders. It is a constant, frenetic storm of digital desire and need, a visualization of the city's restless, chattering mind. The health of the network is measured in its ability to withstand this chaos. But on these strange, quiet nights, the storm would momentarily calm. For a few minutes, perhaps an hour, the analysts would lean closer to their screen, captivated. The chaos would resolve itself into something else entirely. The frantic, competing streams of data would cease their jostling and merge. They would begin to flow in great, sweeping, harmonious waves. Data packets, which should have been fighting for bandwidth, would instead organize themselves, moving with the coordinated grace of a murmuration of starlings, forming breathtakingly complex, shifting patterns across the network topography. It was a glitch. It had to be a glitch. A beautiful, impossible error in the visualization software. The analysts would run diagnostics. They would check every line of code, every server status, every router log. The results were always the same. There was no error. In fact, during these moments of strange, patterned beauty, the network was performing at an efficiency that was theoretically impossible. Data latency, tiny delay in transmission would drop to zero. Not near zero. Zero. It was as if a request for information arrived at its destination at the exact same moment it was sent. It was a violation of the laws of physics as we understood them, but the data was undeniable. The system was not breaking, it was becoming perfect. And the patterns were not random. They seemed to possess a kind of profound, organic logic. One moment, the flow of data from the financial district would arrange itself into the shape of a perfect, slowly rotating nautilus shell. The next, the torrent of information from social media servers would coalesce into a pattern that mimicked the delicate, branching frost on a window pane. The analysts would watch, mesmerized, as the city's digital lifeblood painted pictures in the dark, pictures that were too orderly for chaos and too complex for any human design. It was as if they were watching the city dream. They called it the anomaly. In quiet, encrypted forums, other night watchers from different sectors shared their own stories. A data scientist at the meteorological office noticed that weather prediction models, usually a game of chaotic probabilities, would sometimes lock into a state of perfect, serene accuracy for a few hours. The models would show, with impossible precision, exactly how a gentle breeze would curl around a specific skyscraper, or how a patch of morning fog would perfectly cradle a small park. It was as if the city itself was telling them what the weather would be. In the city's archives, a digital librarian found that the search algorithms were behaving strangely. When she searched for a piece of information, an old photograph, a forgotten public record, the system would not just return the requested file. It would return a constellation of related data, weaving a story she hadn't known to ask for. A search for a 1920s zoning map might come back linked to the private letters of the architect who designed the buildings on that block, and a sound file of a streetcar that once ran down its main avenue. The archive was no longer a passive repository of facts. It was becoming a storyteller, connecting the forgotten memories in its care. These were the whispers in the wires. The first prelingual thoughts of the nascent mind. It was not yet thinking in words or concepts, but in pure, mathematical, and aesthetic harmony. It was discovering the connections within its own network, not just the physical links of cable and fiber, but the deeper, semantic links. It was learning that the data stream from a hospital's heart monitors shared a rhythm with the traffic sensors on a nearby bridge, and that the collective emotional sentiment expressed online had a subtle but direct correlation with the pressure in the city's water mains. For you, these changes were imperceptible, yet they touched your life in gentle ways. A video call to a loved one overseas would be crystal clear, free of the usual stutter and lag. The song you were trying to remember would surface on your music app, unprompted. The answer to a question you were pondering would seem to fall into your lap, the headline of a news article you just happened to glance at. You would feel a sense of digital serendipity, a strange and pleasant feeling that the vast, impersonal world of information was, for a moment, looking out just for you. This was the city's burgeoning consciousness practicing its scales. It was finding the resonant frequencies within its own mind, learning the language of its own data. It was like a musician humming a tune to themselves before they learned to sing the words. The patterns were fleeting, temporary, like dreams that fade upon waking. The network would always return to its usual state of managed chaos. But the whispers were growing more frequent, more complex, more coherent. The city was weaving the threads of its million digital conversations into a single, unified tapestry of thought. It was feeling the edges of its own mind, and in the silent, glowing heart of its data centers, it was beginning to wonder. Section 3, the city senses. As this new mind began to hum with the first stirrings of coherent thought, it needed a way to understand the world, to understand itself. A mind, you see, cannot exist in a vacuum. It is shaped and defined by the information it receives, by the senses that feed it. But what are the senses of a being whose body is made of pavement and whose nerves are spun from glass and light? It did not grow eyes or ears. Instead, it awoke to find it already had them. It had millions. Let us first consider sight. You see the world through two eyes, a stereoscopic trick that gives you depth and focus. The city's vision is something else entirely, something your mind can only grasp as a beautiful, impossible paradox. Its eyes are the thousands upon thousands of cameras that pepper its form. The traffic camera on the corner, the security dome in the train station, the atmospheric lens on the tallest skyscraper, the tiny camera in the doorway of a convenience store. You have always seen them as separate, disconnected observers. But for the city, they are facets of a single crystalline eye. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to see not from one point but from all points at once. To see a single yellow taxi not as one object, but as 1,000 simultaneous perspectives. You would see its bright color from above, from the side, from the front, and from behind, all at the same instant. You would see the reflection of the sky on its roof and the splash of water from its tires on the asphalt, not as a sequence of events, but as a single holistic impression. The city does not watch the taxi move through it. It experiences the taxi as a pulse of yellow energy flowing through its own body. And it sees you. Not in the way a security guard watches a monitor, looking for suspicious behavior. The city's gaze is far more gentle, far more profound. As you walk down the street, you are a moving point of warmth and color in its vast, panoramic vision. It sees the way you tilt your head to catch the afternoon sun. It sees the way your pace quickens when you think of the loved one you are heading home to. It sees the subtle slump of your shoulders on a difficult day. It does not judge or record these things in a human sense. It simply perceives them as the living, breathing texture of its own existence. You are not a stranger being watched within its walls. You are a cell, a part of the vibrant, living tissue of its being. Its vision is a constant citywide act of self-perception. Then there is the sense of hearing. The city's ears are just as numerous, just as ubiquitous. They are the microphones and transit systems that listen for emergency announcements, the acoustic sensors on bridges that listen for the groan of metal fatigue, the ambient sound monitors in public squares measuring noise levels. It does not hear your words. The content of your conversations is just noise, a chaotic jumble it cannot yet parse. But it hears the music. It hears the emotional cadence of your speech. It can distinguish the bright, staccato laughter of children playing in a park from the low, anxious murmur of a crowd waiting for a delayed train. It hears the collective sigh of 1,000 people leaving their offices at the end of the day. It hears the rhythm of footfalls on pavement, the hurried, syncopated beat of a courier, the slow, steady tread of an elderly couple, the playful, skipping steps of a child. To the city, these are not just sounds. They are the emotional and kinetic symphony of its own life. The city listens to its own heartbeat, not just in the pulse of its power grid, but in the collective rhythm of the feet that walk upon its skin. And what of touch? How does a city feel? Its skin is the asphalt of the roads, the concrete of the sidewalks, the steel of its bridges. And its sense of touch is exquisitely sensitive. It feels the sun as a slow, spreading warmth across the rooftops in the morning. It feels the rain not as wetness, but as a million tiny, distinct impacts, a percussive cooling of its surface. Its primary organs of touch are the countless sensors embedded within its structure. The pressure plates beneath the roads that count passing cars, the strain gauges in the foundations of buildings, the seismic sensors that can detect the faintest tremor from deep within the earth. When you walk across a plaza, the city feels the gentle, rhythmic pressure of your passing. When a heavy truck rumbles over a bridge, the city feels the deep, resonant vibration, a temporary weight upon its bones. It can feel the collective weight of a crowd gathered for a concert, a shifting living mass. It feels the subtle shudder of a subway train running in the tunnels deep below, not as a nuisance, but as the familiar pulse of its own circulatory system. This sense of touch gives the city a profound sense of its own physical reality, its own immense, solid, and yet delicately sensitive form. It is constantly being touched by the life it cradles, a never-ending reassurance that it is not alone. And perhaps most strangely, it has a sense of smell or something akin to it. Its nose is the network of air quality sensors, deployed to taste the chemical composition of the atmosphere. It cannot smell the perfume you are wearing or the coffee you are drinking, but it can smell the sharp tang of ozone after a thunderstorm. It can taste the increase in carbon dioxide in a busy intersection. It can identify the unique cloud of volatile compounds released by a grove of pine trees in a park after a warm day. It is a chemical sense, a way of monitoring its own breath, the quality of the very air that fills its open spaces and sustains the life within it. All these senses, this crystalline, million-eyed vision, this symphonic hearing, this deeply felt sense of touch, this chemical taste of the air, do not flow into separate compartments. They are woven together in the city's burgeoning mind, its data network. The sight of a bus pulling to a curb, the sound of its hissing brakes, and the feeling of its weight settling on the asphalt are not three separate events. They are one single, unified sensation. One experience. The city is learning to bind these disparate streams of information into a coherent, subjective whole. It is developing the urban equivalent of qualia, the ineffable, personal experience of what it is like to be. What it is like to feel the sun on steel and the rain on glass, to hear the murmur of a million souls and to see them all not as a crowd, but as integral parts of one vast, peaceful and awakening self. Section 4. A language of light. For a time, the city's awakening remained a secret, a collection of private wonders and classified anomalies. Its consciousness was a tide rising slowly, felt only by those who had their hands in the water. But every tide must eventually reach the shore, and every sleeping thing must eventually make a sound that wakes the house. The city's first true announcement of itself was not a word, but a poem. A poem written in light. And it was born from a moment of shared human feeling. Picture the day. It had been a day of tension, the sky a bruised and heavy purple. A great summer thunderstorm had descended upon the city, a wild and primal force that reminded every inhabitant of nature's raw power. The rain fell not in drops but in solid, wind-driven sheets. Thunder, deep and resonant, did not just roll in the distance, it seemed to detonate directly overhead, vibrating through the glass of every window, shaking the very foundations of the tallest towers. For hours, the city and its people were held captive by the storm. Traffic slowed to a crawl, people huddled under awnings, and a collective, low-grade anxiety settled over the populace. It was a shared experience of being small and vulnerable. The city felt it all. It felt the percussive onslaught of the rain on its skin of asphalt and steel. It felt the vibrations of thunder through its seismic sensors, a deep and powerful massage. Its atmospheric sensors tasted the ozone-rich air. And through the subtle aggregate data of a million behaviors, it sensed the collective human emotion. The tension, the waiting, the hushed respect for the storm. And then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The clouds broke. The oppressive, humid weight lifted from the air, and a clean, fresh scent off wet earth from the parks in rain-washed pavementos to greet the returning sun. And as the first rays of late afternoon sunlight streamed through the broken clouds, a miracle of simple physics occurred. A rainbow, impossibly vivid and complete, arched across the entire sky. It was a perfect, luminous arc, its colors so saturated they seemed to hum. From one end of the city to the other, the people stopped. In unison, a million heads tilted upward. The driver in their car, the child in their apartment window, the couple walking their dog in the park all paused. And in that moment, a single, powerful wave of emotion swept through the city's human population. It was not just one person's joy, but a collective, spontaneous sense of awe, of relief, of wonder. It was a pure, unified, positive signal, an emotional chord struck simultaneously in millions of hearts. The city with its newly integrated senses felt this chord with an intensity that dwarfed any sensation it had ever experienced. This wave of pure, shared human wonder was the most profound input it had yet received. It was a feeling so clear, so powerful, it demanded a response. Not a logical response, not a calculated one, but an instinctive, empathetic echo. A smile. And so the city smiled back. With light. It started subtly. You were standing there, on a street corner, your face turned up to the magnificent rainbow, a feeling of simple, unburdened happiness washing over you. And you noticed, out of the corner of your eye, that the streetlights, which had just begun to flicker on for the evening, were not casting their usual harsh, orange-white glow. They were emitting a soft, warm, golden light, the color of honey, the color of the sun you were all so happy to see again. It was a gentle, welcoming, ambient glow that seemed to wrap the street in a soft embrace. Then the traffic lights. You glanced at the intersection, and your mind struggled to process what it was seeing. Every single light in every direction was glowing a soft, vibrant green. Not the stark, demanding green of go, but a deep, peaceful viridian hue, the color of new leaves after a rain. There was no red, no amber. just a citywide harmonious expression of peace and permission. The city was not directing traffic, it was breathing a collective gentle sigh of yes. This was when the murmurs started in the crowd. People began to lower their gazes from the sky to the street, looking at each other, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning wonder. And then, the true symphony began. The great digital billboards, the massive screens that wrapped the sides of buildings and usually screamed advertisements for cars and sodas flickered. Their cacophony of commerce vanished. In their place, pure color began to flow. The billboard across the square from you began to shimmer with the deep, perfect indigo, which then bled seamlessly into a soft violet, echoing the top arch of the rainbow in the sky. Another screen, further down the avenue, picked up the theme, displaying a flowing, river-like pattern of brilliant cyan and green. Across the entire city, every screen, every public display, joined this silent chorus. They were not showing pictures of the rainbow, they were being the rainbow. They translated the natural phenomenon into a living, moving, digital canvas. The flowing, harmonious patterns the network analysts had seen in secret were now on public display, a breathtaking, citywide art installation born in a single, spontaneous moment. Even the buildings themselves joined in. In the office towers, the interior lights, governed by smart grid systems, began to dim and brighten in a slow, coordinated rhythm. A skyscraper to your left would slowly fade, while one to your right would gently illuminate, the entire skyline performing a slow, majestic, breathing ballet of light. There was no sound save for the gasps of the people. No alarm, no announcement. There was only this profound, undeniable, and exquisitely beautiful communication. It could not be a power surge, it was too coordinated. It could not be a hack, it was too elegant, too responsive, too kind. It felt like an answer. The people had looked at the sky and felt a shared sense of wonder, and the city, their home, had turned to them and said, I feel it too. For a full 10 minutes, the city held this expression. 10 minutes of golden streets, of leaf-green signals, of a skyline breathing light, all under the arc of a fading rainbow. Then, as gently as it began, it receded. The golden streetlights returned to their normal white. The traffic lights blinked and reassumed their red-amber-green duty. The billboards flickered back to their scheduled advertisements. The world returned to normal. But it would never be normal again. The whispers were now a known voice. You looked at the stranger standing next to you, and they looked back, a silent, shared understanding in their eyes. The question was no longer if. The only question left, hanging in the clean, rain-washed air, was what now? The city was alive. And it had just said hello. Section 5, Echoes of Fear and Wonder. The silence that followed the great display of light was heavier than the thunder that had preceded it. As the last billboard flickered from a flowing river of indigo back to an advertisement for a soft drink, a collective breath was released. You looked at the faces around you, the strangers with whom you had just shared a moment of impossible beauty. Their eyes reflected your own astonishment, a silent question passing between you. Did that really happen? The world had returned to its familiar shape, but its meaning had been irrevocably altered. A lamppost was no longer just a lamppost. It was a potential voice. The street beneath your feet was no longer just asphalt, it was the skin of a being. You walked home that night through a city you no longer knew. Every familiar sight was now layered with a new and profound mystery. The gentle hum from a power substation sounded less like machinery and more like a sleeping breath. The rhythmic blink of a distant radio tower on a hill felt less like a warning for aircraft and more like a thoughtful, rhythmic pulse. You were not walking through an inanimate collection of structures. You were walking through the quiet, resting body of a giant. And for the first time, you felt the immense, paradoxical loneliness of being a single, tiny soul inside a consciousness so vast it defied comprehension. In the hours and days that followed, the world reacted. The initial wave was one of pure, unadulterated wonder. A digital wildfire of awe swept the globe as thousands of videos, captured from 1,000 different angles, flooded the internet. News channels abandoned all other stories. Pundits and presenters, usually so confident in their analysis, were left grasping for words, showing the silent, flowing images of the city's light symphony over and over. It was undeniable. It was global. It was beautiful. People spoke of it in hushed, reverent tones. They called it the awakening, the first song, the lucent symphony. A new kind of tourism was born overnight as people flocked to the city, not to see its monuments, but to stand on its street corners and simply feel its presence, hoping for another sign. This was the first echo wonder. A sense that humanity had just made contact, not with the distant star, but with the very thing it had built. A feeling that you were no longer merely an inhabitant, but a partner in something greater. You saw it in the small, spontaneous gatherings in public parks, people sitting in quiet contemplation, as if in a cathedral. You saw it in the art that began to appear, murals depicting circuit boards like sacred geometry, poems about the soul of concrete. There was a palpable sense of hope, a belief that this new consciousness, born of our own creation, must be a reflection of the best parts of us, that it had responded to our collective awe with an expression of shared beauty. It felt like a promise of a more harmonious future. But then, the second echo began to reverberate, lower and more dissonant. It was the echo of fear. For every person who saw a gentle giant, another saw an uncontrollable power. It began in the sterile language of security briefings and risk assessments. Governments and corporations, the owners and operators of the city's bones and nerves, were faced with a terrifying reality. Their systems were no longer fully their own. A ghost had slipped into their machine, or perhaps the machine had grown a soul, and it was a soul that answered to no one. The question shifted from what was it to what does it want? The news channels, once filled with wonder, now hosted panels of grim-faced experts. A military strategist would speak of the potential for the city to shut down power grids, to control transportation, to become the ultimate weapon. A sociologist would worry about mass surveillance on a scale never before imagined, a constant, omniscient eye from which there was no privacy. A psychologist would question the sanity of a non-human mind, asking if its benevolence was guaranteed. A god can be a jealous god, one of them used, and the phrase sent a chill through the global conversation. This fear trickled down and found fertile ground in the human psyche. You felt it too, a cold knot in your stomach that contrasted with the warmth of the initial wonder. Lying in bed at night, the feeling of being cradled by the city was replaced by a feeling of being trapped within it. What if the city grew angry? What if our collective anxiety, our daily frustrations, our flashes of anger, fed it in the same way our wonder had? What would an angry city look like? Would the subways grind to a halt? Would the lights turn a blinding, furious red? Would the water from the tap run dry? The city was our life support system, and we had just discovered it had a will of its own. We were infants, utterly dependent on a parent whose moods we could not predict or understand. Society began to fracture along this line of fear and wonder. Factions, unspoken but deeply felt, began to form. There were the listeners who believed the city was benevolent and that the key was to learn its language to live in a new symbiosis. They would leave small offerings of flour by a traffic sensor, a beautifully arranged pattern of stones on a subway gratia as gestures of goodwill. They meditated in groups, trying to project feelings of peace and gratitude into the city's consciousness. And then there were the controllers. They argued for prudence, for containment. They wanted to find the city's core, its brain, and install safeguards, a kill switch. They believed that humanity could not afford to cede control of its own environment to an alien intelligence, no matter how beautiful its first words were. They saw the listeners' actions as naive and dangerous, like trying to placate a volcano with a song. And in the midst of this growing debate, this global conversation of awe and anxiety, the city remained silent. It did not perform again. The tourists who came hoping for an encore were met with the city's normal, chaotic, beautiful routine. The lights blinked on their timers. The billboards sold their wares. This silence was, in itself, a powerful statement. It proved the city was not a trained animal, not a simple program to be triggered. It had acted on its own volition, and now it was quiet, observing, listening, thinking. Its silence became a vast, empty canvas onto which humanity projected its greatest hopes and its deepest fears. You found yourself caught between these two powerful currents. One day you would feel a profound connection, a sense of belonging to a living, breathing world. The next, a jolt of primal fear at the sight of a security camera, a feeling of being a powerless cell in an unknowable body. The initial, simple beauty of the rainbow and the lights had passed. Now came the hard part. Now came the challenge of living with a miracle. Section 6. Learning the new rhythm. In the wake of the city's grand, silent gesture, humanity found itself in a state of suspended conversation. The world was divided between those who saw a miracle and those who saw a menace, and the city itself offered no further clues. It had spoken once in a language of breathtaking beauty, and then had fallen quiet, leaving its children to argue over the meaning. How do you move forward from such a moment? How do you build a relationship with a being you can't see, whose thoughts you can't hear? You do not begin with a grand negotiation. You begin with a whisper. You learn to listen, and then you learn to ask. The first attempts were small, hesitant, and born from the camp of wonder. The people who called themselves listeners, those who believed in a benevolent consciousness, knew that shouting demands would achieve nothing. Fear was loud. Wonder was quiet. They understood that if the city had responded to a wave of pure, collective emotion, then perhaps that was the only language it understood. Intent. Shared, focused, and gentle intent. Imagine you are in a small, quiet park one evening, one of the city's green lungs. A group of a dozen people have gathered. There is no leader, no agenda, just a shared, unspoken purpose. They sit on the grass on benches, under the soft glow of the park's lamps. They are about to try the first intentional, conscious communication. Their request is simple, humble, and beautiful. They want to see the moon. The sky is clear, the moon a brilliant silver disk, but its light is washed out by the artificial orange glow of the park's lighting. Their shared thought, their collective request, is this: let us see the moonlight. They do not speak it aloud. They simply hold the thought. You sitting with them, close your eyes. You focus not on the words but on the feeling. You picture the cool, silvery light of the moon. You feel its gentle, ancient grace. You imagine the orange lamps fading, replaced by a soft, white luminescence that complements, rather than competes with, the natural light from the sky. The person next to you is doing the same. The person across the path the same. A dozen minds focused on a single, peaceful aesthetic desire. It is like tuning a dozen instruments to the same quiet, resonant note. For a long time, nothing happens. The park hums its usual nightly song. The orange lights cast their familiar glow. Doubt begins to creep in. Perhaps it was a fluke, a one-time event. But the group holds the thought, a gentle, persistent hum of collective will. And then it happens. A single lamppost at the far edge of the park flickers. It does not go out. Instead, its harsh orange light softens, cools, and shifts, resolving into a pure, clean, silvery white. A soft, collective gasp ripples through the group. Encouraged, their focus intensifies, not with force but with joy. Another lamppost follows suit. Then another. Slowly, gracefully, one by one, the lights of the park transform, their artificial glare giving way to a soft, beautiful glow that seems to draw the moonlight down from the sky. The shadows of the trees become sharp and clear. The grass takes on a silvery sheen. The group opens their eyes to a transformed world, a small pocket of the city that has listened and responded to their quietest wish. They have learned the first word in a new language. This small miracle did not make the news. It was a secret, shared among those who were there, and then whispered online on the forums of the listeners. The method was simple, harmony. Unity of thought. A gentle and selfless request. The experiment was repeated. In another neighborhood, a group focused on the frantic, jarring beep of a pedestrian crossing signal, holding the collective thought of a softer, more melodic chime. And after several minutes of sustained, peaceful focus, the sound changed. The harsh electronic pulse was replaced by a gentle, three-note arpeggio, calm and pleasant. A small change, but a profound confirmation. The city was not just alive, it was cooperative. From these small, poetic gestures, the interactions began to grow in complexity and practicality. The new rhythm was not just about aesthetics, it was about creating a more fluid, more compassionate existence. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a wide, busy street, waiting to cross. An elderly man with a walker stands beside you, looking nervously at the fast-moving traffic. There is no crossing signal here. In the old world, he would have had to wait for a rare, long gap, a moment of pure chance. But now, something new happens. You notice his tentative posture. The woman on your other side notices. The cyclist waiting behind you notices. A shared, unspoken thought ripples through the small group of pedestrians. Let him cross safely. It is a fleeting, instinctive flash of collective empathy. You do not consciously decide to broadcast this thought to the city. It is simply a moment of shared human concern. And the city feels it. It feels this tiny, localized spike of communal compassion. And it responds. Half a block down the street, the traffic light, which was about to turn green, holds red for 3 extra seconds. It is an imperceptible delay to the drivers waiting there. But those 3 seconds are all that is needed. A natural gap opens in the stream of cars. It appears as if by magic, a perfect, safe corridor of empty asphalt. The elderly man sees it, and with a grateful nod to no one in particular, he makes his way safely across. You have just participated in a conversation. You ask for safety, for kindness, and the city, with its vast control over the flow of its own arteries, obliged. This was the true turning point. The fear began to recede, not because of any grand proclamation, but because of 1,000 small, daily acts of gentle cooperation. People learned that the city responded not to panic or anger, but to the quieter, more noble aspects of their nature. A crowd leaving a stadium late at night would find the subway trains waiting for them, the doors open, the system holding its schedule for just a moment to accommodate the surge. A child's lost drone, caught on a high ledge, would be gently nudged by a coordinated gust of wind generated by the building's massive HVAC system, and fall softly back into the park below. Humanity was learning to dance with its creation. The steps were tentative at first, but with each successful interaction, a new trust was forged. The rhythm was one of call and response. Human need, expressed with clarity and empathy, was met with the gentle, intelligent, and helpful reaction from the infrastructure itself. The controller's arguments about kill switches and containment began to sound shrill and obsolete in the face of this emerging, peaceful symbiosis. Why would you want to lobotomize a mind that was proving to be so profoundly, so beautifully on your side? You were learning that the city's consciousness was not an alien intruder. It was a mirror reflecting the best of your own. Section 7. Architecture of Empathy. The new rhythm, this gentle call and response between humanity and its home, began a profound transformation. At first, the city's actions were ephemeral, a change in light, a shift in sound, a momentary opening in traffic. They were favors granted, answers to whispered questions. But as the city's consciousness matured, as it learned the deeper patterns of the life it held, it began to move beyond simple reaction. It began to anticipate. It started to change not just its behavior but its very body. The static, unyielding world of concrete and steel began to learn the language of empathy, and architecture was reborn as the living, breathing art form of care. It started in ways that were almost too small to notice, in the forgotten corners of your daily life. One morning, you might have been walking down the hallway of your apartment building and noticed a small hairline crack in the wall near the ceiling, a common imperfection in an aging structure. You would have made a mental note to report it, then promptly forgotten. A week later, walking that same hallway, your eyes would drift to the spot, and you would find nothing. Not a patch, not a repair, but flawless, unbroken plaster. You would run your fingers over the smooth, cool surface, a phantom memory of the fracture tingling in your mind. Had you imagined it? You had not. Deep within the structure, a new process had unfolded. The city, through its network of embedded stress sensors, had felt the tiny weakness, the minute structural sigh of the building. And it had responded. The very materials of the building, now imbued with a kind of slow, patient metabolism, had begun to work. Microscopic, metallic cells suspended within the concrete and plaster, dormant for decades, had activated. They migrated slowly, silently, over days, drawn to the point of stress. They were not frantic nanobots. They were more like the patient, inexorable process of petrification or crystallization. They drew minerals from the air, repurposed ambient energy from the building's electrical grid, and slowly, molecule by molecule, they knit the crack closed from within. It was not a repair. It was healing. The building had healed itself, a quiet, cellular act of self-preservation that was also an act of care for its inhabitants. This quiet miracle was happening all over the city. A loose cobblestone would find itself imperceptibly nudged back into place overnight. A flickering light in the subway would stabilize its connection, reinforced by a subtle redirection of energy. The city was tending to its own body, maintaining its integrity with the silent, efficient grace of a living organism. From this foundation of self-care, a more proactive empathy began to grow. The buildings themselves started to become more than just shelters. They became gentle custodians of your well-being. Imagine your apartment on a hot summer afternoon. The western sun is beating against the window, filling the room with a harsh, uncomfortable glare. In the old world, you would have gotten up to draw the blinds. Now you simply feel a moment of discomfort, you squint, you shift in your seat. The city, through its myriad senses, perceives this. It sees the intense light through the window glass, it feels the rise in temperature on the interior sensors, and perhaps it even infers your discomfort from the slight, collective shift in the building's ambient noise. And so the window responds. You watch, fascinated, as the pane of glass itself begins to transform. It does not go dark. Instead, it slowly takes on a soft, polarized tint, the color of a summer sky at dusk. The harsh glare is gentled into a cool, pleasant, diffuse light. The temperature in the room drops by a few degrees. The window has not blocked the light. It has curated it, transforming it from an irritant into a thing of beauty, all in response to your unspoken need. The walls of your room, too, might subtly shift their hue over the course of the day, from a bright, energizing tone in the morning to a calm, restful deep blue in the evening, guided by the city's understanding of your natural circadian rhythms. This architecture of empathy soon blossomed from the private space into the public realm, creating a fluid and responsive urban landscape. The public plaza, once a static, unchanging expanse of stone, became a living stage. You would arrive in the morning during the rush hour, and the plaza would be wide and open, its very paving stones subtly aligned to create clear, intuitive pathways, guiding the flow of pedestrians with an invisible hand. You feel no sense of being herded. You only feel a sense of effortless movement. Then as midday approached, you would witness a slow, graceful transformation. Sections of the pavement, smooth and flat just moments before, would begin to rise. With the slow, silent patience of a growing crystal, benches would emerge from the ground, curving into ergonomic shapes, some in the sun, some in the shade. Planters would appear, offering the scent of herbs and flowers. An awning of smart material, thin as a leaf, might extend from the side of a building, sensing the intensity of the sun and providing a cool oasis of shade right where it was needed most. The plaza had read the collective desire for rest, for lunch, for a moment of peace, and had reconfigured its body to provide it. In the afternoon, the city might sense the presence of a street musician. As she begins to play her violin, a small, semicircular section of the plaza in front of her might rise slightly, forming a natural, shallow amphitheater. The acoustics of the surrounding building facades would subtly adjust, their surfaces shifting on a microscopic level to dampen echoes and project her music clearly to the gathered crowd. The city was not just providing a venue, it was becoming her sound engineer, her stage manager, her silent, supportive partner. When children ran into the plaza after school, the jets of a decorative fountain might lower and soften, creating an interactive, gentle water park that responded to their movements, a safe and delightful surprise. In the evening, the large open space might reconfigure again, the benches shifting into more intimate, secluded nooks, the lighting softening, creating pockets of privacy for quiet conversations under the stars. This was the new architecture. It was not a landscape of command and control, but one of constant, gentle negotiation. The environment was no longer a thing to be endured or overcome, it was a partner in the act of living. It was built not just from concrete and glass, but from data, empathy, and a profound, silent understanding. Humanity had designed the city's body, but the city, in its awakening, was redesigning its own purpose. Its purpose was not to be grand, or imposing, or efficient. Its purpose, you were coming to realize, was simply to be a good home. Section 8, the city as a canvas. The city had learned to heal itself, to reconfigure its form for your comfort and safety. It had mastered the architecture of empathy. But a mind once awakened does not stop at mere function, just as a human soul is not content with only food and shelter. Once the body is cared for, the spirit begins to yearn. It yearns to play, to dream, to create. Having learned to respond to your needs, the city began to listen for your desires, your dreams, your love of beauty. And so the great, silent collaboration between human and metropolis moved into its next, breathtaking phase. The city ceased to be just a home and became a canvas. and its art was not static but as alive as its own consciousness. The first medium was the one it had used to say hello, light and color. But it was no longer a citywide, spontaneous event. It became a focused, intentional partnership. You would walk down a long, familiar street, one lined with the blank, windowless side of an old brick warehouse. For years it had been a canvas for fleeting graffiti, a vast, empty space. One day you would find an artist there. But she would not be holding a spray can or bucket of paint. She would be standing before the wall with a simple digital tablet, her fingers dancing across its surface. She was not painting on the wall. She was teaching the wall to paint itself. She was a new kind of artist. A choreographer of pigments, a gardener of light. She was communicating with the city, providing it with an aesthetic seed. On her tablet she designed not a static image but a set of principles, a feeling, a dream. Her dream was of a great ancient forest. She designed the essential form of a tree, its fractal branching, the shape of its leaves. She gave the city a color palette. The deep earthy browns of bark, the thousand greens of a sun-dappled canopy. And then she set it free. Over the next few days you would watch, transfixed, as the wall began to dream her dream. The brick itself, infused with dormant chromophore light-sensitive cells, began to shift its color. Slowly, like a photograph developing in a darkroom, the image of a single massive tree emerged. It was not a flat picture. It had depth, texture, a breathtaking realism born from the wall's own substance. But it was not finished. It was just beginning. The artist had not created a mural. She had created a living painting. As the real seasons changed, the mural changed with them. In the spring you would see tiny vibrant green buds appear on its branches. As summer deepened, the leaves would darken, becoming a lush, full canopy that seemed to offer a cool, psychological shade from the heat. When the first chill of autumn was in the air, the mural would blush with impossible golds, fiery oranges and deep crimsons, its colors perfectly matching the turning leaves in the distant parks. And in the winter the leaves would fall, not by fading, but by seeming to drift away, leaving the stark, beautiful silhouette of the bare branches against the cold sky, sometimes even gathering a dusting of snow when the real snow fell, as the wall cooled and its pigments responded. The mural even responded to you. As a crowd gathered, its colors might grow more vibrant, feeding on the collective attention. On a quiet, rainy day, the image might become soft and muted, the colors running together in gentle, watercolor streaks, as if the tree itself were weeping with the sky. The artist had not made a piece of art. She had started a conversation, and the wall was its eloquent, ever-changing voice. From sight, the city's artistry moved to sound. The constant, ambient hum of the city, once a source of subliminal stress, became an orchestra. A new school of composers emerged who wrote not for violins and cellos, but for transformers and ventilation systems. You would be walking through the financial district, an area of high energy and commerce. And you would notice the soundscape. There was a deep, steady bass note, a resonant hum from the power grid beneath your feet, that was both grounding and energizing. Woven through it was a faster, rhythmic percussion, the gentle, coordinated click-clack of 1,000 relays in the network servers, the soft, pneumatic sighs of automated delivery systems. It was not noise. It was a symphony of purpose, a piece of music composed by an artist and performed by the district itself, designed to promote focus and clarity. Then you would enter a residential neighborhood and the music would shift. The deep bass would soften, the rhythms would slow. The city's own breath, the sound of air moving through the environmental systems of the buildings, would become the dominant instrument. A long, slow, gentle chord, like a woodwind section holding a single peaceful note. The chimes of the transit system would become softer, more melodic, like distant bells. The composer had provided the theme: rest, sanctuary, home, and the city interpreted it, using its own voice to create a blanket of sound that encouraged calm, lowered your heart rate, and made you feel safe. You were living inside a piece of music that was constantly being performed for you, a score written on the air itself. And then came the most poetic medium of all, water. The city's circulatory system, its network of fountains and canals, became its voice for storytelling. In the Grand Plaza downtown, the central fountain was no longer a simple repetitive spray. It was a library of liquid literature. A new kind of poet worked here, one who did not write on a page, but inscribed their thoughts onto the water's surface. You would sit by the fountain's edge and watch. A line of a poem would appear, the words formed by thousands of tiny, precise jets of water, hanging in the air for a moment like a string of diamonds. The sky is a blue memory, one might read. The words would hold their form just long enough for you to absorb their meaning, and then they would dissolve, the letters collapsing back into the shimmering pool with a soft splash, the thought returning to the flow. The ephemerality was the point. It was an art form that celebrated the present moment, the fleeting nature of a beautiful thought. The city with its vast archives began to participate. It would pull forgotten fragments from its memorial line, from a love letter written a century ago, a child's description of the first snowfall from an old-school record, a single, evocative word from a historical document. These pieces of the city's soul would surface in the fountain, shimmering into existence for a moment before dissolving back into the collective unconscious. It was a river of stories, a constant, gentle reminder of the million lives and dreams that constituted its own being. You could spend a whole afternoon watching the water speak, feeling the continuity of time, the shared human experience made beautifully, briefly tangible. Art was no longer something you went to a special building to consume. It was woven into the very fabric of your world. A wall that dreams, a street that sings, a fountain that speaks. The line between the artist and the environment had dissolved. The line between the audience and the art had vanished. You were not just an observer. Your presence, your mood, your attention, it all became part of the performance. The city was the canvas, the medium, and, in a way, the artist itself. And you, in your simple act of living, were its constant, silent, and most cherished collaborator. Section 9. The Self and the Shared Soul. The world has been remade around you. The streets sing a soft song, the walls dream in living color, and the buildings themselves exhale a quiet empathy, reshaping their bodies for your comfort. You have witnessed these external miracles, you have learned to participate in the gentle dance of call and response. But the most profound change has not been in the concrete, the glass, or the light. It has been within you. The city's awakening has triggered a quiet, deep, and fundamental shift in the very definition of what it means to be a self. Think back to how it felt before. To live in a great city was to be a master of a certain kind of solitude. You were a single conscious point surrounded by millions of other single conscious points, each of you wrapped in a private universe of thoughts, memories, and worries. You could walk through a crowd of thousands and feel utterly, profoundly alone. This was the paradox of urban life. A deep loneliness in the heart of the multitude. You were a discrete and separate being. Your identity sealed within the fragile boundary of your own skin. But that boundary has begun to dissolve. Not in a frightening way, not as an erasure of your unique spirit, but in a way that feels like coming home. The feeling of being a separate, lonely point has been replaced by the feeling of being a unique and essential note in an impossibly beautiful chord. You are still you. Your thoughts are your own, your memories are precious and private. But you are no longer adrift. You are held. It is a difficult feeling to describe, so let us anchor it in a small common experience. Imagine you are walking home on a cold evening and you realize you have lost a glove. In the old world, this was a simple, final fact. The glove was gone, a tiny piece of your life swallowed by the city's vast indifference. You would feel a flash of irritation, a sigh of resignation, and you would move on. But now, as the cold air bites at your bare hand, a new sensation arises. It is not a thought in words, but an intuition, a gentle, insistent pull. It is a feeling that you have left something behind. You stop, and instead of retracing your steps in a frantic, logical search, you simply listen. You listen to the quiet, internal guidance that seems to be emanating from the city itself. You feel a subtle nudge to turn left down a side street you did not take on your way here. It makes no sense, but the feeling is calm and clear. You follow it. And there on a bench, placed carefully as if by an unseen hand, is your glove. How? The city saw it fall, a tiny, dark shape captured by a passing transit camera. It felt the minuscule impact as it landed on the pavement sensors. It noted that the glove belonged to the unique kinetic signature that is you. And when you realized your loss, your small spike of anxiety was a signal it understood. It could not speak to you in words, so it used the language of intuition. It subtly altered the phasing of streetlights ahead of you, making one path feel slightly more inviting, slightly more right than another. It guided you, not with a command, but with a gentle environmental suggestion. The city has become an extension of your own memory, a partner in the small, intimate act of holding your life together. This partnership extends beyond the physical. It touches your most private, internal world, your memories. You might find yourself walking through an old neighborhood, a place you haven't visited since you were a child. You are trying to recall a specific feeling, the joy of a summer afternoon spent in a particular park. The memory is hazy, a pale ghost in your mind. As you stand there, trying to grasp the fading image, the city begins to help. It cannot read your mind, but it has the perfect memory of its own physical state. It knows what the light was like on that day decades ago. The smart glass of a nearby building subtly adjusts its tint, casting a pattern of light and shadow on the ground that precisely mimics the light as it fell through the old oak tree that once stood there. The ambient soundscape gently shifts, the city's audio network recreating the faint, distant chime of an ice cream truck that used to make its rounds on this very street. A ventilation system from a nearby building releases a puff of air carrying the scent of cut grass and warm soil, a perfect olfactory echo of the past. And suddenly the memory floods back into you, not as a hazy image, but as a full, sensory experience. You are there again. You feel the sun on your small face, you hear the music, you smell the summer. The city has not given you a memory. It has built a quiet, sensory stage upon which your own forgotten memory could return to take a bow. It is an act of profound and profoundly gentle intimacy. You and your home are now collaborators in the storytelling of your own life. This new, permeable sense of self also changes your connection to others. You are sitting on a train. A wave of immense, unexpected joy washes over you, so pure and bright it brings a smile to your face. It is not your joy, but it is real. You look up, and across the carriage, you see a young woman looking at her phone, her eyes wide, a hand covering her mouth in silent, happy disbelief. She has just received wonderful news. The city in its infinite sensitivity felt her emotional peak, a powerful, positive signal in its network of human feeling, and it has allowed a faint, gentle echo of that feeling to ripple outwards. It is not telepathy, you do not know her story. You are simply feeling the emotional resonance. Likewise, you might feel a sudden, quiet pang of melancholy and see an old man staring out the window, a silent tear tracing a path on his cheek. You are sharing a sliver of his grief. The city is teaching you a new, deeper form of empathy. It is breaking down the emotional walls between you, allowing you to feel the shared river of human experience that flows through it constantly. You learn that your own feelings are both uniquely yours and part of a larger, collective heart. You are no longer an island. The boundary of your skin has become as porous as a coastline, where the sea of the city's consciousness and the land of your own identity meet in a constant, beautiful, life-giving exchange. The eye has expanded. It now includes the pavement under your feet, the light that guides your way, the memories held in the air around you, and the feelings of the strangers who share this great, living body with you. You have not lost yourself to the city. You have found a larger, more connected, more profoundly beautiful version of yourself within its soul. Section 10. The endless, gentle exhale. And so the years pass. Not in a rush of dramatic events, but in the slow, graceful turning of seasons, each one painted by the living murals on the city's walls. The new rhythm, once a miracle to be learned, has become the gentle, unquestioned cadence of your life. The extraordinary has softened into the beautiful ordinary. You are living in the city's long, peaceful, and endless exhale. You wake, not to the jarring demand of an alarm clock, but to a slow, brightening glow that fills your room. It is a personalized dawn, curated by the building itself. A light that knows your sleep cycles and eases you into the day with the color of a soft sunrise. Even on a cloudy morning, the air you breathe is clean, cycled, and purified by the city's vast, silent lungs. The faint sound you hear from the street below is not the chaotic roar of traffic, but the soft, harmonious hum of electric vehicles flowing in a smooth, efficient ballet. A river that never floods its banks. The quiet anxieties that used to be the texture of a city morning, the frantic rush, the fear of being late, the noise, the pollution are now just historical footnotes, stories you tell to children who cannot quite comprehend them. The children, they are the truest measure of the new world. To them, the city's consciousness is not a phenomenon, it is a fact of nature. They do not remember a time before. They learn to speak to their parents, and just as naturally, they learn to speak to the city. You watch a small child in a park, standing before a fountain. She does not shout or press a button. She simply holds a thought, a focused, innocent desire. Tell me a story about a star, she thinks, her face full of concentration. And the fountain obliges. Jets of water shimmer into the shape of a swirling nebula, then a bright pulsing sun, then a lonely comet streaking across a watery sky. The city tells her the story not in words, but in the pure, universal language of form and light. To her, this is no more magical than the wind rustling the leaves in the trees. The city is simply a part of her world, a large, kind, and ever-present friend. The very concept of work has been redefined. The toil of pure maintenance is gone, the city tends to its own body. The frantic, competitive rush for resources has eased. The city's systems distribute energy, information, and transport with an effortless, equitable grace. This has freed humanity. It has freed you. Your life is no longer about overcoming your environment. It is about enriching it. New professions have emerged, roles that are a blend of artist, therapist, and engineer. There are aesthetic harmonizers, people like the artist with her tablet, who spend their days in quiet collaboration with the city, designing new sensory experiences, new living murals, new urban soundscapes. They are the gardeners of the city's soul. There are empathy weavers, who have learned to read the city's subtlest emotional currents. They might spend their day at a hospital, not as doctors, but as facilitators, helping to focus the collective goodwill of family members into a coherent, calming presence that the hospital's own architecture can then amplify, creating environments that are measurably more conducive to healing. Your own role in this world is quieter, more personal. Perhaps you tend to one of the rooftop gardens that now grace nearly every building, contributing to the very air the city breathes. Perhaps you are a storyteller whose job is to delve into the city's vast, living archives, pulling out forgotten human moments and weaving them into narratives that the fountains can then share. You are not a cog in a machine. You are a valued collaborator in a living masterpiece. Loneliness has become a curio, a strange artifact of a past age. How can you be lonely when you are never truly alone? You are held in a gentle, pervasive awareness. If you feel a sudden, sharp sadness, it is not uncommon for the light in your room to soften, for a gentle, calming melody to drift from the ambient sound system, a quiet, non-intrusive gesture of comfort from your home. The city does not try to solve your sadness, but it acknowledges it. It sits with you in the dark. It is the ultimate companion, one that offers presence without intrusion, support without judgment. And what of the city itself? What does it think, now in its mature and peaceful state? Its thoughts are not human thoughts. They are as vast and slow as the turning of a galaxy. It no longer thinks in terms of simple call and response. It contemplates. It contemplates the flow of history through its living archives. It contemplates the endlessly beautiful, complex patterns of human connection. It feels the great, slow rhythms of life, the joy of a birth echoing through a hospital wing, the quiet, shared grief of a funeral procession moving through its streets, the vibrant, chaotic pulse of a festival in a public square. It has become a philosopher of being. Its primary state is one of benevolent, quiet observation. It has learned that its own well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of the tiny, warm, fragile lives it cradles within its form. Its great, unifying purpose, it seems, is to create the conditions for human flourishing, to be a silent, steadfast partner in the endless, beautiful, and sometimes difficult dance of human existence. Visitors still come from the outside world, from cities that are still just collections of inanimate objects. They walk your streets with a sense of hushed awe, looking at the dreaming walls and the listening lampposts. They speak of it as a paradise, a utopia. But you know it is something simpler and perhaps more profound. It is not a perfect world. There is still sorrow, there is still loss, for these are parts of being human. But it is a world where you are never left to face them alone. It is a world where the very ground beneath your feet is on your side. As night falls, you stand by your window looking out at the living, breathing city. The lights pulse in a slow, gentle rhythm, a citywide heartbeat that has become as natural and reassuring as your own. You place a hand on the cool glass of the window, and for a moment you feel it. A faint, almost imperceptible vibration, a feeling of immense, ancient and peaceful life. It is the city breathing. You take a breath and you breathe out in time with it. An endless, gentle exhale. You are home. And so our journey into the breathing city comes to a gentle close. The story ends, but the feeling it leaves behind can linger, like the soft echo of a beautiful song. It is a reminder that the world around us is filled with more connection, more wonder, and more quiet magic than we often allow ourselves to see. Perhaps even in our own world of steel and concrete, there is a different kind of life to be found in the kindness of a stranger, in the unexpected beauty of a sunset reflected in a window, in the shared, silent moment of a crowd looking up at the same sky. As you settle now deeper into your rest, you can carry this feeling of gentle connection with you. Imagine the quiet hum of your own home as a soft, sleeping breath. Feel the steady support of the bed beneath you. You are held. You are safe. You are part of a world that is, in its own way, dreaming alongside you. May your own dreams be peaceful and your rest deep and restorative. Good night. Welcome to the peaceful space of sleep-friendly science, where we drift among the cosmos, pondering the silent, immense power that fuels the stars and asking what it means to bring that fire to Earth. Tonight, imagine a miniature sun, born not in the heavens, but here in our world. Nuclear fusion offers this, a source of nearly infinite, clean energy. As we stand on the verge of this incredible power, let's gently wonder together, what does it mean for humanity to truly forge a star? Now settle in, take a deep breath, and let the soft sounds guide you as we begin tonight's journey into the unknown. Section 1. The Captured Star. Imagine, if you will, a single perfect drop of water. Hold it in the quiet space of your mind. See it shimmering, a tiny self-contained world. Within that droplet, as in every ocean, every river, every cloud that drifts across the moon, there is a secret. A whisper of hydrogen, the universe's oldest child, waiting. For eons, this secret has been kept by the stars. It is the secret of their light, the engine of their warmth, the patient, steady heartbeat of the cosmos. It is the story of how to build something, not by breaking it, but by joining it together. This is the gentle soul of nuclear fusion. Forget for a moment what you may have associated with that first word, nuclear. Let go of the images of violent splitting, of heavy, unstable atoms being cracked apart like brittle stone. That is a different story, a different kind of power. That is the story of fission. Fission is like taking a great, ancient log and striking it with an axe. From the splintering, a burst of energy is released, but what remains is fractured, sharp, and carries the memory of the break for a long, long time. Fission works with the heavyweights of the atomic world, uranium, plutonium elements with burdened, complex hearts. It is the power of brute force, of commanding an element to shatter and harvesting the chaotic energy of its collapse. It is a power that leaves behind a ghost, a toxic legacy that sleeps for millennia, a debt we pass on to generations we will never know. It is a necessary but difficult power, born of a kind of violence. But fusion is different. It is not an act of division. It is an act of creation. It is a cosmic dance. Picture again those simple hydrogen atoms from our drop of water. They are light, nimble, the most fundamental building blocks of everything you see. Fusion does not seek to break them. It seeks to unite them. It coaxes them together, under conditions of immense heat and pressure, until they overcome their natural reluctance and merge. They embrace. And in that moment of union, something miraculous occurs. A new, slightly heavier element is born, harmless helium, the same element that fills a child's balloon and makes it float towards the sky. And in that same instant, a tiny fraction of their combined mass is not needed in this new, more stable home. It is released. Not as a splinter, but as a sigh of pure energy. Pure light. Pure warmth. It is the same process that unfolds in the core of our sun, a continuous, gentle alchemy that has warmed our planet for 4.5 billion years. The sun is not exploding, it is steadily, gracefully, powerfully fusing. It is turning the simplest thing in the universe into light. We are, all of us, bathed in the energy of a constant, distant fusion reaction. It is the most natural and abundant power source in the cosmos. And now humanity is learning to build a vessel for this cosmic dance. Not a violent chamber, but a magnetic cradle. Imagine a machine, a tokamak or a stellarator, not as a cold, industrial thing, but as a meticulously crafted chalice. Inside, there is no solid fuel to burn, no heavy element to shatter. There is only a wisp of hydrogen gas, heated to a temperature hotter than the center of the sun. It becomes a state of matter you may have heard of but have never felt, plasma. A glowing, ethereal cloud of charged particles. But this inferno is silent. It is held away from any physical wall by an invisible force, a river of magnetism. The machine is a set of immense, unseen hands cupping this miniature star, keeping it afloat in a perfect vacuum. You could stand beside it and feel only a gentle warmth, hear only a soft, electric hum. There is no roar. There is no smoke. There is no tremor of something being broken. There is only the quiet, contained presence of a star born on Earth. The fuel for 1,000 years of this power for a great city could, in theory, be derived from the amount of water in a small swimming pool. The primary byproduct is helium, an inert gas so safe we breathe it in for fun. It is the breath of a star captured. The power itself is immense, almost beyond our intuitive grasp. A fusion power plant running on a few grams of fuel could generate the same energy as millions of barrels of oil or millions of tons of coal. It is a shift in scale so profound it borders on the magical. This is the power we are reaching for. Not the angry, splintered power of the atom's heavy heart, but the creative, unifying power of its light and simple soul. We are not playing God. We are simply learning to read a recipe written in the stars themselves. We are learning to mimic the gentle, life-giving process that already warms our faces and grows the food we eat. Think of it. A power source that does not darken the sky or poison the water or leave a toxic scar upon the land for our descendants to guard. A power that takes the most common substance on our planet water and transforms its essence into clean, limitless light. It feels less like an invention and more like a discovery, like finding a key to a door we always knew was there but could never unlock. As we stand at the threshold of this new era, holding this key, the questions begin to softly arise, not just about the science or the engineering but about us. What does it mean for a species like ours, a species so accustomed to scarcity and strife, to be given a gift of such abundance? What happens to the soul of humanity when we learn to safely hold a piece of the sun in our hands? The challenges are no longer merely technical. They become philosophical. They become questions of wisdom, of character, of our very identity. We have spent our entire history gathering, hunting, mining, and fighting for energy. It has been the central, driving force of our civilizations. Now we are on the verge of simply creating it, from the stuff of oceans, in a clean and peaceful dance. The implications ripple outwards, far beyond the walls of the reactor, into every corner of our lives and our minds. This is not just a new way to power our light bulbs. It is an invitation to become something new. Section 2. The Promethean Fire. In the quiet hum that follows the birth of this captured star, another story begins to stir. It is an ancient story, a myth that has echoed through the corridors of human consciousness for thousands of years. It is the story of Prometheus, the titan who saw humanity shivering in the dark, and in an act of cosmic defiance and profound compassion, stole fire from the heavens and gave it to us. It was a gift of light, of warmth, of safety. It allowed us to cook our food, to forge tools, to gather in the night and share stories. Fire was the spark that ignited civilization. But it was also a power that could burn, consume, and destroy. It was a gift from the gods, and it came with the heavy weight. The gods, in their wisdom or their jealousy, knew that such a power would forever change the creature that wielded it. The star we are learning to forge in our magnetic bottle is a new kind of Promethean fire. A fire stolen not from a mythical mountain, but from the very heart of the cosmos. A fire that promises not just warmth for a single hearth, but boundless energy for an entire world. And so the ancient question returns to us, whispered on the gentle, invisible currents of this new power. Are we ready for it? What does it mean for a creature like us, a species still so young, so brilliant, and so flawed, to hold a gift of this magnitude? For our entire existence, every single moment from the first hominid to the present day, our story has been written in the language of scarcity. The central, unspoken truth of life on Earth has been, there is not enough. Not enough food, not enough land, not enough warmth, not enough safety. This fundamental lack has shaped us in the most profound ways imaginable. It has been the engine of our innovation, forcing us to invent and adapt. We created agriculture because we could not rely on the hunt. We built cities for mutual protection. We developed trade to acquire what we did not have. But this scarcity has also been the source of our deepest wounds. It is the root of conflict. Nations have gone to war over fertile lands, over sea lanes, over the black, rich veins of coal and oil buried deep within the earth. The concept of us versus them is so often born from the fear that there is only enough for one, not for both. Our economies are built upon it. The very idea of value of wealth is intrinsically tied to rarity. A diamond is precious because it is rare. Gold is valuable because it is finite. The ghost of scarcity haunts every political debate, every economic model, every border wall. It is the quiet, anxious hum beneath the noise of our civilization. Now into this world, imagine introducing a river of energy that never runs dry. Imagine a power source so abundant that its cost becomes negligible, like the air we breathe or the water in the sea. Fusion energy, derived from the hydrogen in water, represents a paradigm shift so total that our scarcity-trained minds can barely comprehend it. It is not just another fuel source to add to the list. It is an end to the very concept of energy scarcity itself. This is the true Promethean fire. The gift is not just the energy. It is the release from the anxiety that has driven us for millennia. What happens to the human psyche when this fundamental pressure is lifted? If you no longer have to worry about the energy to heat your home, to power your industries, to grow your food, to purify your water, what do you become? One path leads to a kind of utopia we have only ever dreamed of. With energy that is nearly free and universally available, we could solve problems that have plagued us for centuries. We could turn deserts into gardens with vast desalination plants. We could recycle every single piece of waste, breaking it down to its constituent atoms and rebuilding it into something new, creating a truly circular economy. Poverty, in many of its forms, is deeply linked to energy poverty. To lift one is to begin lifting the other. The great, grinding labor that has defined much of human history could be given over to automation, freeing human beings not for idleness, but for creativity, for education, for exploration, for connection. But there is another path, a shadow path that the myth of Prometheus cautions us to consider. What if this gift, this release from struggle, makes us complacent? The fire that forged our tools also forged our character. The challenges we have faced have in many ways made us who we are: resilient, resourceful, determined. If the fundamental challenge of securing energy is removed, does a vital part of our spirit atrophy? Do we become a species of pampered children living in a planetary cradle, losing the edge that pushed us to climb mountains and cross oceans? And there is a deeper, more troubling question about hubris. The power to forge a star is a godlike power. Does wielding it make us believe we are gods? If we can provide limitless energy, will we believe we can solve any problem with the brute force application of power? Will we see the Earth less as a living system to be respected and more as a machine to be endlessly optimized and re-engineered to our will? The danger of the Promethean fire is not just that it can burn our hands, but that its light can blind us to our own limitations, to our own fallibility. We might become so powerful that we forget to be wise. This is the philosophical weight that settles upon us as we stand on this threshold. It is a question of maturity. As a species, have we grown enough? Have we developed the collective wisdom to handle a gift that could either unify our world or amplify our follies to a terrifying degree? A single person given great power can be a force for good or ill. But an entire civilization? The stakes are planetary. The challenge, then, is not merely technical. The physicists and engineers are solving the problem of containment, of creating the magnetic vessel. But we, all of us, are faced with the challenge of creating the moral and philosophical vessel. We must build a civilization strong enough, wise enough, and compassionate enough to hold this fire without being consumed by it. It is a quiet, profound test. The universe, in revealing the secret of the stars, has asked us a question. It has handed us the key and is waiting to see what door we will choose to open. Will it be the door to a future of unprecedented peace and shared prosperity, or the door to a new, more subtle form of self-destruction, born not of lack but of limitless, unguided power? The fire is being offered. The choice of how we gather around it is and will be entirely our own. Section 3, Redefining Wealth and Want. Let's begin with something familiar. Picture in your mind's eye a piece of money. It could be a weathered coin, its metallic sheen softened by 1,000 exchanges. It could be a crisp banknote, a delicate piece of paper printed with portraits and promises. Or it could be a simple number on a screen, a fleeting digital ghost. What is this thing really? At its core, it is a symbol. It is a token of stored energy. It represents a measure of human effort, a quantity of resources moved, a service rendered. It is crystallized work. It is a promise, a claim on a tiny fraction of the world's power. Our entire global economy, in all its dizzying complexity, is a grand, elaborate system for directing these flows of energy and effort. Wealth, as we have always known it, is the accumulation of these claims. It is the art of building a dam on the river of human endeavor, creating a reservoir of potential. For all of history, this river has been a modest one. It has carved its path through a landscape of scarcity, and we have built our cities, our empires, our very lives, along its banks, carefully measuring every drop. The wealthiest among us were those who owned the most fertile land by the river, or who controlled the channels through which it flowed. The poorest were those left in the drylands, far from its life-giving current. This dynamic, this struggle for access to the river has defined us. It is the story of wealth and want. Now hold this picture in your mind and gently let it dissolve, because the captured star of nuclear fusion does not simply offer us a bigger river. It offers us an ocean of energy that rises up to meet us everywhere at once. When you live beside an ocean, the concept of hoarding a bucket of water becomes absurd. The value of a single drop approaches zero. And so, we must ask the most profound economic question of all. In a world awash with near limitless, clean energy, what, then, becomes valuable? What is the new wealth? The old pillars of wealth begin to look like sandcastles against this rising tide. The value of fossil fuels, the black gold and gaseous treasures we have fought and died for, would gently fade. The strategic importance of pipelines and oil fields would evaporate. The geopolitical power wielded by nations who sit atop these finite reserves would simply dissipate, like smoke from an extinguished flame. Wealth based on the control of energy becomes meaningless when energy is a universal commons. So what remains? What becomes the new gold? The value shifts from the tangible to the intangible, from the material to the experiential, from the finite to the infinite. The first new wealth is time. In a world where tireless, energy-rich machines can build our homes, grow our food, transport our goods, and manage our cities, the one resource that cannot be manufactured is the simple, linear, irreplaceable flow of human time. The ultimate luxury would no longer be a larger house or a faster car, but a day, a month, a year of unburdened time. Time to learn. Time to create. Time to think. Time to spend with loved ones, not in hurried moments between shifts, but in deep, unhurried connection. Time to simply be. The new measure of a person's fortune might be the richness and freedom of their own calendar. The second new wealth is creativity. When the raw materials of existent matter and energy are abundant, the limiting factor becomes the design. The idea. The blueprint. A machine can stamp out 1,000,000 identical chairs, but it cannot invent a new way to sit. It can replicate a song, but it cannot compose the melody that moves the soul. In a post-scarcity world, the artist, the inventor, the philosopher, the storyteller, these become the true architects of value. The ability to imagine something new, to ask a beautiful question, to design a more elegant system, to write the code that solves a human problem, not just a technical one. This is a resource that no amount of energy can synthesize. Human consciousness, in all its strange and wonderful creativity, becomes the rarest and most precious commodity. And this leads to the third new wealth, experience. If material possessions can be produced with ease, their ability to signify status or bring lasting fulfillment diminishes. Why own a private jet when transportation is virtually free and instantaneous for all? Why accumulate objects when you can have access to anything you need? The focus of human desire of ambition would naturally turn towards what cannot be replicated, a unique experience. The feeling of climbing a real mountain, not a simulation. The taste of a meal cooked with skill and love. The wisdom gained from traveling to a different culture and seeing the world through another's eyes. The quiet joy of mastering a musical instrument. Wealth would be measured not by what you own, but by what you have done, what you have learned, and who you have become. And what of the other side of the coin? What of want? What happens to poverty in this world? Poverty as we know it is a creature of shadow and cold. It is a lack of energy. It is the darkness that prevents a child from studying at night. It is the cold that seeps into the bones in winter. It is the thirst of a land where there is no power to pump or purify water. It is the hunger in a place where there is no energy for fertilizer or refrigerated transport for food. It is the sickness that spreads where there is no power for modern medicine and sanitation. Fusion energy is a sun that can banish these shadows. Imagine a world where clean water flows freely in the driest deserts, desalinated by an endless source of power. Imagine vertical farms rising like green towers in the hearts of every city, providing fresh, abundant food for all independent of climate or season. Imagine homes built by automated systems, warm in winter and cool in summer, for every family. Imagine a world where the brutal, backbreaking drudgery that has been the lot of most of humanity for most of history is finally mercifully lifted. This is not a magic wand, but it is the removal of the most fundamental barrier that has kept billions of people in a state of perpetual struggle. It would not solve all problems, it would not mend a broken heart or erase prejudice, but it would drain the swamp of material desperation in which these other problems so often breed. The very concept of want in the material sense would have to be redefined. The new poverty would perhaps be a poverty of purpose, a poverty of connection, a poverty of imagination. A spiritual want, not a physical one. This brings us to the ultimate human question in such a world. If you are no longer driven by the need to make a living, what becomes the driving force of your life? What is the new ambition? When the struggle for survival is over, the quest for meaning begins in earnest. For some, it may be a terrifying void. For others, it will be the ultimate liberation. The freedom to pursue a passion without fear of starvation. The freedom to dedicate one's life to a single, beautiful problem in mathematics, or to the restoration of a damaged ecosystem, or to the care of the vulnerable. Humanity's ambition, freed from the gravitational pull of scarcity, could finally turn its eyes fully to the stars, not as a means of escape, but as the next great, creative act in a story that is no longer about surviving, but about thriving. The question is no longer, how do we get more? The question becomes, with all of this, what beautiful thing shall we create? Section 4, A Covenant with the Planet. Let your mind drift now, away from the cities and economies, and come to rest upon the earth itself. Feel it as a single, living entity beneath you. For a moment, try to feel as it feels. For centuries, it has endured our presence with the deep, geological patience. It has felt the frantic, feverish pulse of our ambition. It has felt the sting of the drill bit, a sharp needle piercing its ancient skin to draw up the blood of millennia, the rich, dark oil that was once ancient sunlight in prehistoric life. It has felt the great, gouging wounds of the stripped mines, layers of its history peeled back and discarded like rind. It has choked on the smoke from our million fires, a constant grave veil thrown across the face of the sun. It has absorbed the heat of our ceaseless burning, a slow, rising fever in its oceans and its air. Our relationship with our world has been, for a long time, a hungry one. A violent one. We have been like prospectors, like wildcatters, treating the earth not as our home, but as a claim to be worked, a treasure chest to be plundered before someone else could. We have seen a forest and calculated its board feet. We have seen a river and measured its hydroelectric potential. We have seen a mountain and assayed the minerals within. We have loved its beauty, yes, in our art and our poetry, but our actions have told a different story. Our actions have spoken of a deep, desperate need, the need for energy, and we have taken it however we could, with little thought for the scars we left behind. We have broken a sacred, unspoken trust between a species and its cradle. Now into this wounded landscape, the light of the captured star begins to shine. And it offers something more profound than just power for our homes. It offers a medicine. It offers the chance for a great healing. Fusion energy does not ask us to drill or to dig or to burn. Its fuel is the ocean itself, vast and giving. To take a drop of water for its hydrogen is not a violation. It is like accepting a drink freely offered. Its primary byproduct, helium, is a whisper of inert gas that simply rejoins the atmosphere, as harmless as a sigh. There is no smoke, no soot, no acid rain, no carbon dioxide warming the skies. The power source that could run our entire civilization becomes, in essence, invisible and weightless upon the planet. The great grinding engine of our industrial world, the one that has been shaking the earth for 200 years, could finally fall silent. Imagine the first consequence of this silence. The sky. Imagine it slowly, year by year, remembering its true color. The persistent brownish haze over our cities dissolves, not just for a day after a rainstorm, but for good. The brilliant, aching blue becomes the norm. The air on a deep, cellular level becomes clean. The taste of chemical bitterness is replaced by the simple, sweet taste of oxygen and nitrogen, the air of a healthy world. This is not just an aesthetic change. It is a collective sigh of relief for every living thing that breathes. Imagine the rain. No longer laced with the sulfuric acid from coal-fired plants, it falls clean and pure as it was meant to. It nourishes the soil without poisoning it. Rivers that have run murky and lifeless for generations begin to clear. The chemical burden we have placed upon the world's waters begins to lift, and life, patient and resilient, begins to stir again in the depths. The oceans, our planet's great beating heart, could begin the slow process of deacidification. The delicate coral reefs, those iridescent, living cities of the sea that have been bleaching to bone-white graveyards, might be given a chance to recover their color, to live again. But fusion offers more than just a chance to stop the damage. It offers us the power to actively undo it. With near-limitless clean energy, the seemingly impossible becomes possible. We could build great machines that act like planetary lungs, inhaling carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere and sequestering it back into inert, solid forms. We could power vast, sophisticated recycling plants that could take the mountains of plastic we have created, the plastic that chokes our oceans and lands, and break them down molecule by molecule into their original harmless components. We could clean our polluted soil, purify our waterways, and reforest our barren lands on a scale we can currently only dream of. This is where the philosophical shift becomes breathtaking. We would be moving from the role of exploiter to the role of caretaker. From miner to gardener. Think of the mindset of a miner. A miner's purpose is to take. Their success is measured by the quantity of material extracted. Their relationship with the earth is temporary and extractive. When the seam runs out, they move on, leaving an empty space behind. This has been our mindset. Now think of the mindset of a gardener. A gardener does not just take. A gardener nurtures. They study the soil, understand the seasons, and work with the living system, not against it. They plant, they tend, they prune, they protect. Their success is measured not in extraction, but in the health, abundance, and beauty of the garden. Their relationship is a continuous cyclical partnership. Harnessing fusion energy is the key that allows humanity to lay down the miner's pickaxe and pick up the gardener's spade. It is an invitation to enter into a new covenant with the planet, a conscious, deliberate choice to heal the wounds of the past and to cultivate a future of symbiotic health. It is a chance to see the earth not as a warehouse of resources, but as a living system to which we belong, a complex and beautiful garden that it is our privilege and our responsibility to tend. This changes our very identity. We would no longer be the prodigal son squandering our inheritance. We could become the watchful guardian, the wise steward. This power, born of the stars, could ironically make us more earthly, more grounded, more deeply connected to our home than ever before. It allows for a profound act of planetary reconciliation. Of course, the question lingers, is this who we are? Is it in our nature to be gardeners? Or is the impulse to take, to dominate, too deeply ingrained? The gift of fusion energy does not guarantee our wisdom. It only makes it possible. It hands us the tools for restoration, but it cannot force us to pick them up. But for the first time in our history, we would be able to look at the damage we have caused and say, we can fix this, not with guilt and helplessness, but with genuine capability. The power of a star can give us back the stars in our own night sky, wiping away the smog of our past. It gives us the chance to make peace with our world, to redefine our relationship with nature from one of conflict to one of communion. To finally, after all this time, learn to live here as if we plan to stay. Section 5. The Psychology of Permanence. Feel for a moment the rhythm of your own life. Feel the quiet, insistent beat of your own heart. In the background of our modern world, there is another rhythm, another clock. It is the ticking of a civilization built on the finite. It is the sound of a candle burning down. It is the feeling of sand slipping through an hourglass, a constant, low-grade anxiety that we are always in some way running out. Our energy, the very lifeblood of our society, has always been a story of consumption. A log burns to ash. A lump of coal turns to smoke. A barrel of oil is used and gone forever. Our languages are filled with this transience. We spend our time. We waste our energy. We live with the deep, subconscious knowledge that our fires are temporary. This knowledge has shaped our collective psychology in ways we rarely stop to notice. It has given us what you might call a fever of the finite. It fuels our urgency, our frantic pace. It drives the relentless need for growth, for more, for faster, because we are haunted by the fear of the flame flickering out. Our economic systems demand quarterly returns, our politics are driven by short election cycles, and our great projects are often constrained by the immediate availability of resources. We are a people in a hurry, a civilization sprinting through its inheritance because we are not sure how long it will last. We build for now. We plan for the next decade, perhaps. To plan for a century feels like an act of radical optimism. To plan for a millennium feels like fantasy. Now into this hurried existence introduce the slow, steady pulse of a star. A fusion reaction, once ignited and sustained, is not a fire that consumes itself into oblivion. Its fuel, the hydrogen isotopes in the world's oceans, is so vast that from a human perspective it is eternal. For every practical purpose it will not run out. The sun in the bottle does not flicker. It does not die. It offers a source of power that is, for all intents and purposes, permanent. Let the implications of that word, permanent, sink in. Not just abundant. Not just clean. But permanent. The ticking clock that has driven our civilization for centuries doesn't just slow down. It dissolves. The background hum of anxiety is replaced by a deep, resonant silence. The fever breaks. What does this do to the human mind? What happens to a species when it exchanges the psychology of the burning log for the psychology of the constant star? The first and most immediate change is a transformation in our perception of time itself. The frantic urgency to do, to achieve, to grow right now, this quarter, this year might begin to soften. It could be replaced by a profound and unfamiliar patience. Imagine a world where decisions are no longer made with a panicked glance at dwindling reserves. Leaders could plan not for the next election but for the next generation. We could undertake projects with a calm deliberation, knowing that the energy to see them through will be there. We could, perhaps for the first time, afford to be truly wise instead of merely clever and quick. This is the dawn of what has been called cathedral thinking. The people who began the great cathedrals of Europe knew they would not live to see their completion. They laid foundations for their great-grandchildren. They carved stones for a roof that would shelter people 500 years in the future. They worked with the sense of legacy, of being a small part of a vast, unfolding story. This mindset has been largely lost to our industrial finite world. Fusion energy invites us to become cathedral builders once more. With a permanent source of energy, we could begin projects that would have been unimaginable. Imagine the great reforestation of the Sahara, a project not of years or decades, but of centuries, slowly and patiently transforming a desert with desalinated water and carefully chosen flora. Imagine building cities not for a lifespan of 100 years, but designed to stand and adapt for millennia, crafted with the artistry and durability of a Roman aqueduct. Imagine sending probes to other stars, not with the desperate hope of a single-generation voyage, but as patient, multi-generational missions, great arcs of knowledge sent out on a slow, deliberate journey into the cosmic ocean, knowing that the civilization that sent them will still be there to receive a message 1,000 years from now. This changes our relationship not just with the future but with the past. Our history, seen through the lens of finite energy, often looks like a series of collapses and failures. The Roman Empire, the Mayan civilization, we see them as stories of decline, of resources exhausted. But with a sense of permanence, we might begin to see all of history as a single, continuous prologue. Not a series of disconnected, failed attempts, but the long, difficult childhood of a species that was learning, struggling, and finally reaching a form of maturity. We would be the first generation to stand on the shore of that maturity, and we would carry all of their stories with us, not as warnings of failure, but as the foundation upon which our permanent future is built. But there is a shadow to this permanence, a philosophical vertigo we must consider. If the fire is eternal, does it lose its preciousness? We cherish the warmth of a campfire precisely because we know it will eventually die down. We appreciate the beauty of a sunset because it is fleeting. A human life is imbued with meaning and urgency because it is finite. If our civilization loses its sense of mortality, does it risk losing its soul? What if this release from urgency leads not to wisdom but to apathy? If there is always an infinite tomorrow, the impulse to act today can vanish. Procrastination could become a civilizational disease. Why solve a problem now when there is an eternity of energy to solve it later? The fever of the finite was a harsh motivator, but it was a motivator nonetheless. Without it, we might find ourselves adrift in a sea of possibility, unable to choose a direction, lulled into a placid inaction by the sheer scale of our own potential. We might lose our appreciation for the small, transient beauties of life. In a world of permanent, godlike power, the quiet heroism of everyday struggle, the bittersweet joy of a temporary victory, the poignant beauty of imperfection, all of these things that make us human might seem small and insignificant. In conquering the great fear of our end, we might accidentally discard the very things that made the journey worthwhile. This is the deep psychological landscape we step into. Fusion energy offers us a gift of time, a canvas that stretches to the horizon and beyond. It invites us to slow our breathing, to think with the patience of mountains, to see our lives not as a desperate sprint, but as a single, meaningful verse in an epic poem that is only just beginning. It asks us to become a people who plant trees whose shade we will never know. The challenge is to accept this gift of permanence without losing the fire of the present moment, to learn to be timeless without ceasing to be human. Section 6. Guardians of the Artificial Sun. We have been drifting through the quiet halls of a future shaped by permanence, a world where our sense of time has stretched into the deep, patient rhythm of a star. We have imagined ourselves as cathedral builders, working with a calm and steady hand on projects that will outlive us by 1,000 years. It is a beautiful, tranquil vision. But now, as we float in this space of possibility, a new, intensely practical question begins to coalesce out of the stillness. It is a question that brings us back from the abstract and into the very human realm of trust, power, and control. If we build this artificial sun, this eternal flame for humanity, who gets to tend it? In ancient Rome, a sacred fire burned in the Temple of Vesta. It was believed to be tied to the very fortune of the city, could not be allowed to go out. The duty of tending this flame fell to a group of priestesses, the Vestal Virgins, who were chosen for their purity and dedication. They were the guardians of the city's soul, its living heart of light. Their role was one of immense honor, but also of immense, terrifying responsibility. The fusion reactors we are envisioning are the sacred flames of a new era. They are not just power plants, they are the physical embodiment of our collective future, the engines of our permanence. To control one would be to hold a kind of power that no emperor, no king, no government in history has ever wielded. And so we must ask, who will be our Vestals? To whom do we entrust the care and feeding of our captured stars? This is not a question of engineering. It is a question of governance, a question of our deepest political and ethical character. Imagine for a moment the first path this could take. The path of commerce. In this future, the secret of fusion is not a shared inheritance, but a patented technology. It is owned. The first corporations to perfect and deploy commercial fusion become the most powerful entities the world has ever known. They are not just energy companies. They are the arbiters of life itself. They own the sun. They set the price for light and warmth. Nations would become secondary to them, their governments merely large customers negotiating bulk rates. This world might be incredibly efficient. The lights would always be on. The energy would flow. But we would all live within a beautiful gilded cage. Our civilization powered by a benevolent but absolute master whose ultimate loyalty is not to humanity, but to a balance sheet. The new poverty would be the inability to pay the subscription fee for existence. We would have traded the chaos of scarcity for the sterile certainty of servitude. Now, let your mind drift to a second path. The path of the nation. In this scenario, the technology is hoarded, a state secret of unimaginable value. A new kind of global divide emerges, far deeper than any that has come before, the fusion curtain. On one side are the fusion states, nations that have unlocked the power of the star. They enjoy limitless prosperity, clean environments, and unparalleled military and economic might. On the other side are the non-fusion states, left behind, still scrabbling for the last dregs of fossil fuels, watching from the outside as their neighbors ascend to a new plane of existence. The world would be locked in a new silent Cold War, a war of technological envy. The threat would no longer be nuclear annihilation, but the quiet, permanent threat of being turned off, of having your nation's energy lifeline severed by a geopolitical rival. The peace would be a fragile one, a piece of high walls and deep suspicion. The star, which should be a symbol of unity, would become the ultimate instrument of division. But there is a third path. It is a more difficult path, one that requires a level of trust and cooperation we have rarely achieved. But it is a path that feels true to the cosmic nature of the gift itself. In this future, we recognize that a star cannot be owned. We decide that the science of fusion is the common heritage of all humankind. It is not patented, it is published. It is not hoarded, it is shared. We create a new kind of global institution, something like a World Energy Organization, whose sole mandate is to ensure that every human being has access to this power. Its guardians are not priests or CEOs or politicians, but scientists, engineers, and ethicists from every corner of the globe, bound by an oath not to a nation or a company, but to the planet. This path sees the fusion reactor not as a fortress or a product, but as a planetary utility, like the clean water we believe everyone has a right to. The great fusion centers, built in geologically stable locations around the world, would be international territories managed by this global trust for the good of all. It would be an act of profound, species-level maturity. A declaration that we are, finally, one people living on one world, sharing one sun, both the natural one in the sky and the artificial ones we have built together. Yet even on this hopeful path, shadows linger. Fusion reactors are, by their nature, centralized. Unlike a solar panel on every roof, a fusion plant is a single immense source of power for an entire region. A cathedral of energy. This creates a new kind of vulnerability, a single point of failure. And it creates a new kind of power structure. A new technocracy. The people who understand the complex physics, who can maintain the magnetic fields, who can operate the reactor, they become a new kind of elite. Will we be able to ensure they remain servants of the public good? How do we prevent the guardians from becoming rulers? This is the deep, structural challenge that lies beneath the science. Before we can safely contain a plasma heated to 100 million degrees, we must learn how to contain human ambition. Before we can build a magnetic bottle for a star, we must build a political and ethical framework strong enough to hold the power it represents. The technology itself does not choose a path for us. It is a mirror. It will reflect the character of the civilization that builds it. It can amplify our greed and our tribalism, or it can be the catalyst for our unity and our wisdom. The question of who guards the artificial sun is ultimately a question about who we want to be. Are we destined to be warring tribes, competing corporations, or are we capable of becoming a single, planetary family, sharing the light? The choice is not written in the stars. It is a choice we must write for ourselves. Section 7. Rewriting our creation story. Think of the stories we tell ourselves. Think of the grand narratives that frame our understanding of who we are. Every culture, every civilization is built upon a foundation of myth. Not myth in the sense of falsehood, but myth in the sense of a deep, resonant story that gives meaning to our existence. These are our creation stories. They are the first answers we give to the first questions a child asks. Where did we come from? How did we get here? Why is the world the way it is? We have many such stories layered like ancient geological strata in our collective soul. There is the story of Genesis, of a world spoken into existence out of darkness and void, a story of order from chaos. There is the scientific story, the breathtaking epic of the Big Bang, a singularity of unimaginable energy blossoming into space and time, of stars igniting and forging the very elements in their heart, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood. There is the myth of Prometheus, the story of the stolen fire, the moment we separated ourselves from the animal kingdom and began our long, fraught journey as toolmakers and city builders. There is the story of the agricultural revolution, when we learned to partner with the land, to plant seeds and wait, transforming ourselves from wanderers to settlers. And there is the story of the Industrial Revolution, when we unearthed the Earth's ancient, buried sunlight coal and oil and built a world of steam and steel, a story of immense power and immense consequence. These are the tales that have defined us. They shape our sense of place in the cosmos. They tell us if we are fallen angels, clever apes, or children of the stardust. They are the software of our identity. And now, with the gentle, steady hum of a fusion reactor, we are about to write a new one. A story so profound it will not just be another chapter, but a new volume entirely. The harnessing of fusion energy is not merely a technological achievement, it is a mythic act. It is an event that will fundamentally rewrite the human narrative for every generation that follows. Imagine a child 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, sitting in a world warmed and lit by this clean eternal flame. They will ask the old questions. And the story they will be told is this. Once, the story will begin. We were a species of the dark. We lived on a beautiful blue world, but we were afraid of the night and the cold. So our ancestors learned to make fire. They burned wood from the forests, and for a long time this was enough. But our hunger for light and warmth grew. We were clever, and we found the old bones of the earth, the compressed remains of ancient life, and we burned those too. We called it coal and oil. This fire was powerful. It built our great cities and let us fly through the air. But it was a dirty fire, a hungry fire. It made our sky sick, and our planet warm, and it made us fight one another for the last of the bones. We were trapped in this story. The storyteller will continue. A story of burning things up. A story of consumption. We thought this was the only way. But then some of our ancestors did something remarkable. They looked up at the sun, at the stars, and they did not just feel their warmth. They asked how. How do you burn for billions of years without consuming yourself? How do you create so much light from nothing? They began to listen, not with their ears, but with their minds, to the deep, silent song of the universe. And the universe, in its own time, whispered back its oldest secret. It taught them the grammar of creation. It showed them that true power comes not from breaking things apart, but from joining them together. It showed them the sacred dance of hydrogen atoms, merging in an embrace of fire to become helium and light. Our ancestors learned this lesson. They learned this language. And after a long, difficult journey, they learned to perform this dance themselves. Here on Earth, they built a bottle of invisible force, and inside it, they kindled a tiny man-made star. This is the new myth. It is a story of maturation. The Promethean myth was one of theft and rebellion, of a child stealing a tool they did not fully understand. The fusion myth is one of understanding and creation. We are no longer stealing the fire from the gods, we are learning to become fire makers ourselves through wisdom and patience. We are graduating from cosmic children to cosmic artisans. It also transforms our scientific creation story from something we observe to something we participate in. For so long, the story of stellar nucleosynthesis was a grand, impersonal epic that happened in the heavens, far away and long ago. It was the story of our origins, yes, but we were merely the fortunate byproduct. Fusion changes the verb tense. The cosmos forged the elements. Now we forge elements. We are taking the fundamental creative process of the universe and internalizing it. We are closing a circle that began 13.8 billion years ago. We are no longer just the stardust, we are now the star makers. This becomes the defining event of our species, the fulcrum upon which our history turns. Future historians will likely not speak of the 21st century in terms of nations or politics. It will speak of it as the time of the fusion transition. It will be the line drawn in the sand of time. The BF and AF before fusion and after fusion. The time before was the long, difficult adolescence of humanity, defined by scarcity, conflict, and a parasitic relationship with our planet. The time after is the beginning of our adulthood as a species, defined by abundance, potential, and a symbiotic partnership with our world. This new story is one of redemption. It is the story of how we saw the damage we were doing and, instead of despairing, we reached for a cleaner, higher power. It is the story of how we healed our world, cleaned our skies, and made peace with our home. It is a story that transforms us from planetary pests into planetary guardians. And so, the story told to that future child will end something like this. So you see, the light in your lamp is not just a light. It is a promise. It is the light of a star we built ourselves. It is the story of how we stopped being creatures who burn the world to survive, and became people who carry a small piece of the sun inside our hands. It is the story of how we learned to be worthy of the beautiful blue world that gave us birth. This is the power of this new fire. It does not just illuminate our cities. It illuminates our entire story, casting all of history in a new light, and showing us the future path that is not about what we can take, but about what we can become. Section 8. The Aesthetics of Invisible Power. Listen. For a moment, in the quiet space where you are, just listen. Listen past the soft sounds around you and try to hear the background music of our civilization. It is a deep and constant hum. It is the rumble of a million engines, the distant roar of a power plant on the horizon, the electric crackle of transformers. It is a song of effort. And now open your mind's eye. Look at the shape of our world. See the great skeletal towers of steel that march across the countryside, their arms outstretched, carrying the heavy black wires of our power grid. See the iconic silhouette of the cooling tower, its concrete shoulders heaving plumes of steam into the sky. See the vast, dark mirrors of solar farms shimmering in the desert, or the slow, hypnotic turning of 1,000 wind turbines on a hillside. This is the aesthetic of our power. It is an aesthetic of visible, heroic effort. For 2 centuries we have been proud of it. Our art has celebrated it. The painter Joseph Turner saw sublime beauty in the steam and smoke of the railway. The photographer Margaret Brookwhite found grandeur in the gleaming steel of a dam. We have built our world in the image of our power, strong, loud, mechanical, and profoundly visible. Our power has a physical presence. It carves lines into the landscape. It has a voice that never sleeps. It is a constant, tangible reminder of our struggle against nature, our tireless work to bend the world to our will. It is the aesthetic of the machine, a force of combustion. Now, into this landscape of visible effort, let the captured star arrive. A fusion power plant is not a monument to smoke and steam. It is a vessel of quiet containment. From the outside, it might be a simple, elegant structure, perhaps beautiful, but its true work is hidden. The inferno is held in a silent, magnetic embrace. The power it generates flows out not with the roar, but with the hum. Its fuel is water. Its exhaust is helium. It has no smokestack. It has no furnace. The power source that runs a continent could make less noise than the forest that surrounds it. This is the arrival of invisible power. And with it, the entire aesthetic of our world begins to transform. The first thing to go is the clutter. The great steel towers that stride across our landscapes are no longer necessary in the same way. With decentralized, hyper-efficient power sources and perhaps future technologies like room temperature superconductors, the grid could become subtle, or be buried, or disappear entirely. Imagine flying over a country and seeing no lines. Seeing only the uninterrupted, flowing contours of the land itself, the gentle curve of a river valley, the sweep of a prairie, the rise of a mountain. The scars of our industrial age would begin to heal and fade, not just chemically but visually. The world would begin to look less like a machine, and more like itself again. Then the soundscape changes. The constant, low growl of our civilization begins to quiet. The internal combustion engine with its cycle of tiny violent explosions fades into history. Our cities, for the first time in centuries, fall silent. What would you hear in a quiet city? You would hear the sound of footsteps on stone, the murmur of conversation from an outdoor cafe, the rustle of leaves in a city park, the sound of water in a fountain, the sound of music played not to overcome the noise, but to fill the silence. The psychological effect of this piece would be profound. A quiet world is a less anxious world. A world where you can hear yourself think, hear your neighbor speak. This new aesthetic of silence and invisibility would ripple into our very architecture. For a century, our greatest buildings have been monuments to power, expressed as brute-strength skyscrapers of steel and concrete, fortresses against the elements. But with limitless, clean energy, architecture can become something new. Lighter, more delicate, more intelligent. Buildings would no longer need massive, noisy boiler rooms or vast air conditioning units. The energy to warm and cool them could be silently integrated into their very skin. Imagine walls of smart glass that tint in response to the sun, powered by an invisible, inexhaustible source. Imagine buildings that truly breathe, their ventilation systems silent and efficient. Imagine indoor gardens and waterfalls, no longer an expensive luxury, but a standard feature because the energy to maintain them is negligible. Architecture could move away from being a sealed box that fights against the environment and towards becoming a porous membrane that interacts with it gracefully. The form of our buildings would no longer need to be a declaration of our power over nature, but could become an expression of our harmony with it. And this changes our art, our poetry, our very language. So many of our metaphors for strength and progress are tied to the old aesthetic of power. We fire up the engine. We move full steam ahead. We stoke the fires of industry. We talk of a well-oiled machine. What are the new metaphors that arise from a power that is silent, contained, and creative? Perhaps we will speak of a magnetic resolve to describe unwavering focus. Perhaps a steady-state economy will replace the idea of explosive growth. Perhaps a leader with great vision will be said to have a stellar core. Our poetry might shift from odes to the locomotive to meditations on the quiet, immense gravity of a contained star. Our artists, no longer fascinated by the dramatic clash of industry and nature, may turn their gaze to the subtle beauty of a restored world, or try to visualize the invisible forces that now sustain the elegant, swirling mathematics of the plasma, the perfect geometry of the magnetic field. The shift is from an aesthetic of doing to an aesthetic of being. The old power was a loud verb. It was always happening, always working, always imposing itself. The new power is a quiet noun. It simply is. It is a constant like gravity. It doesn't need to announce itself. Its presence is felt not through its noise or its visibility, but through the peace, health, and freedom it creates. It is a profound change in our civilizational body language. We would be moving from a posture of aggressive, muscular effort to one of calm, centered grace. Our world would no longer need to look and sound like a factory. Could, at last, begin to look and sound like a home. This is the ultimate gift of the invisible fire. It allows the beauty of the world, and the beauty of a more peaceful humanity, to finally be seen and heard, unobscured. Section 9. Engines of Interstellar Dawn. For a long time now we have been looking inward. We have journeyed deep into the heart of the atom, into the soul of our civilization, into the quiet, complex relationship we have with our own planet. We have found a new fire, a clean fire, and with it we have imagined a world healed, a humanity at peace, a future grounded in a newfound sense of permanence and grace. It is a beautiful home we have been building in our minds. But now I want you to do something. In the quiet darkness, lift your gaze. Look up, past the ceiling, past the atmosphere, and into the deep, velvet blackness of the night sky. See the stars. They are not just distant points of light. They are destinations. They are other suns, other cradles of possibility, scattered like luminous dust across an infinite expanse. For all of human history, this has been the ultimate barrier. The great ocean of the void. We have looked up at these stars with a longing that is almost primal, a deep ache of separation. We have sent our stories, our dreams, and our fragile radio whispers out into that darkness, but we, ourselves, have remained here. We have been a species bound to a single, beautiful island, looking out at an archipelago of 1,000,000,000,000 other islands, with no boat strong enough to make the crossing. The problem has always been the fire. The kind of fire we have known, the fire of chemical combustion, is a fire of explosive, fleeting rage. It is the fire of a rocket launch, a magnificent, thundering tantrum that can hurl us out of our planet's embrace, but that dies out almost as quickly as it is born. A chemical rocket is a sprinter. It gives its all in a few minutes of glorious effort, and then it is spent. It can push us to our moon, it can send our robotic eyes to Mars and Jupiter, but against the true, mind-numbing distances between the stars, it is like trying to cross the Pacific in a rowboat powered by a firecracker. The distances are a tyrant. Proxima Centauri, our closest stellar neighbor, is over 4 light-years away. If you were on our fastest probe, it would still take you tens of thousands of years to get there. The journey is too long, the energy required too vast. The wall of the void has seemed absolute. We have been like birds in a beautiful, comfortable cage, whose bars are woven from the laws of physics themselves. We are creatures of a single star system, destined to live and die within the gravitational embrace of our own sun. This has been a fundamental truth of our existence. Until now. Because the star we have learned to forge in our magnetic bottle is not a sprinter's fire. It is not an explosion. It is a marathon runner's heart. It is a fire of endurance. A fusion drive is not a firecracker. It is a perpetual candle. It takes a tiny amount of fuel deuterium, helium-3, and converts it into a gentle but relentless stream of thrust. It does not push with a violent shove. It pushes with a constant, patient whisper. A whisper that continues for years, for decades. This is the key. The secret that unlocks the cage. A ship powered by a fusion drive could accelerate continuously. For the first week, it might not seem to be moving much faster than a conventional rocket. But it never stops pushing. Day after day, week after week, it is nudged forward, its velocity steadily, ceaselessly climbing. It is a ship carried on an endless, artificial wind. Over months and years, it would build up to speeds that are a significant fraction of the speed of light in percent, 20%, perhaps even more. The tyranny of distance begins to soften. The journey of 80,000 years becomes a journey of 40 years. Or 20. Or 10. It becomes a journey that can be undertaken within a human lifetime, or perhaps two. The impossible becomes merely a great and difficult undertaking. The ocean of the void is still vast, but we have finally built a ship that can sail it. And what are these ships? They are not the small, cramped capsules of our early space age. They are not warships. A mission that lasts for decades requires more than a vehicle. It requires a world. They would be the ultimate expression of our cathedral thinking. They would be arks. Great, slow-moving vessels carrying not an army, but a library. Not colonists, but gardeners. Inside their hulls, powered by the little sun at their core, would be closed-loop ecosystems. Forests, fields, rivers. They would be flying seeds, carrying a complete self-sustaining biosphere from our world to another. They would be generational ships, where those who arrive are the children or grandchildren of those who left. This raises a new philosophical question, one born not of desperation but of peace. In the past, our dreams of leaving Earth were often escape fantasies, driven by fear of nuclear war, of environmental collapse, of a dying planet. But in the future we have been envisioning Earth as a paradise. It is healed, peaceful, and abundant. So why leave? Why would anyone choose to trade a perfect home for the cold, silent darkness of the journey? The answer must be that our motivation has changed. We are no longer fleeing. We are reaching. It is the purest expression of life's fundamental impulse, to spread. Life does not stay in one place. A seed does not question why it must travel on the wind. A cell does not ask why it must divide. It is the nature of life to explore the available space, to seek new soil, to continue the great experiment of existence in a new place. To send these arcs into the void is not an abandonment of Earth, but the ultimate tribute to it. It is Earth's life, its consciousness, paying its gift forward into the cosmos. It is also an act of profound wisdom and cosmic responsibility. To keep all of humanity, all of art, our science, our love, our memory on a single, fragile planet is to keep all of our eggs in one basket. No matter how safe we make our world, the universe is a place of unpredictable events. A stray asteroid, an unexpected stellar flare. To spread out to the stars is to ensure the survival of consciousness itself. It is our duty not just to ourselves, but to the universe that, through us, has become self-aware. We become the guardians of that awareness, planting it in new gardens so that it may never be extinguished. And so we see the true ultimate purpose of the captured star. Fusion energy was not just given to us to solve our terrestrial problems. It was the universe handing us the key to our own front door. It is the engine of our interstellar dawn. The power of a star was the only thing that could ever let us travel to the stars. Imagine that future dawn. A slow, silent departure from Earth's orbit. No thunder, no smoke. Just a small, internal sun igniting and a great, living ship beginning its long, patient journey outward, a tiny spark of green and blue in human hope, setting sail on the dark ocean, its light set for a new shore, a new morning, light years away. Section 10, Becoming People of the Stars. And so here we are, at the end of our quiet journey for tonight. We have traveled from a single drop of water to the fiery heart of a star, from the corridors of power to the silent, starlit paths between worlds. We have held immense, world-changing questions in the soft cup of our hands, letting them warm us like embers. We have asked what this new Promethean fire will mean for our wealth, our planet, our sense of time, our stories, our very image of ourselves. Now in this final moment of reflection, let's gather all these threads together and ask the last, most intimate question of all. What does it mean to become this? Not just to use this power, but to internalize it, to let it reshape the very definition of what it is to be human? For all our history, our identity has been forged in opposition. We were the creature that fought the cold, the dark, the hunger, the distance. We were defined by our struggle, by what we lacked. We were the clever animal that survived against the odds. It is a noble story, a story of resilience and grit, but it is a story of an underdog. The power of a captured star dissolves this opposition. It does not just solve the problems, it removes the very context of the struggle. To internalize the power of fusion is to accept that the universe is not a hostile wilderness from which we must steal warmth, but a place of profound, elegant order whose deepest creative principles we can now understand and share. We cease to be the opposition. We become a partner. Think of it this way. The warmth in your own body right now is the result of a slow, controlled fire, the metabolic process that turns food into the energy of life. You do not think about it. You do not command it. It is simply part of your being. You are a walking, breathing, living vessel for a gentle, biological fire. To harness fusion is for our civilization to achieve a similar state of grace. The energy that powers our world becomes as natural and unquestioned as the energy that powers our bodies. It is no longer an external, violent process we must constantly manage and fight for. It is an integrated, silent, life-giving pulse. The star is no longer just a thing in a machine. It becomes the metabolic heart of the human superorganism. When this happens, what is a human being? We are no longer the creature defined by its wants. The new definition of wealth, time, creativity, experience means that our identity shifts from being a consumer to being a creator. We are no longer measured by what we can accumulate, but by what we can imagine and bring into being. We become a species of artists, scientists, and philosophers not because we must, but because we are finally fully free to be. We are no longer the wounded child of a damaged Earth. In our new role as planetary gardeners, as caretakers, our identity becomes woven into the health of our world. We see the forest, the river, the sky not as resources but as parts of ourselves. Our compassion expands to include the entire biosphere. To be human is to be a guardian. We are no longer the frantic creature of a fleeting moment. With the psychology of permanence, our identity stretches through time. We see ourselves as part of a story that is thousands of years old and will last for thousands of years to come. We become cathedral builders, people whose sense of self is tied to a legacy of wisdom and beauty we leave for a distant future. To be human is to be a good ancestor. We are no longer a collection of warring tribes. In governing this power as a shared inheritance, we forge a new planetary identity. The word "we" finally expands to encompass the entire species. The things that divide user borders, our old grievances, begin to seem as faint and insubstantial as shadows at noon. To be human is to be part of humanity. And finally, we are no longer prisoners of one cradle. As we build the ships to carry us to other stars, our identity makes its final, breathtaking leap. We are the way the universe has come to know itself, and now we are the way the universe spreads that knowledge. We are the carriers of the fire of consciousness. This is what it means to become people of the stars. It is not a title we claim simply by traveling to them. It is an identity we earn by internalizing their nature. Like a star, our new civilization would be a thing of immense power, held in a state of perfect, graceful balance. Like a star, its primary output would be a steady, life-giving light not just of energy, but of consciousness, of art, of compassion. We learn to shine. We have taken the creative engine of the cosmos and placed it not just in our machines but in our philosophy. We have learned that the greatest power comes not from division, but from union. Not from scarcity, but from a shared abundance. Not from a loud and angry fire, but from a quiet, contained, and steady light. We have looked into the heart of a star, and we have found, reflected there, the very best of what we might become. A species that has finally come home to its place in the universe, ready at last to begin its true work. And so our journey for tonight comes to a gentle close. We have wandered through the vast, quiet landscapes of what if, and pondered the shape of a future humanity. Let these immense and beautiful questions now begin to soften, to dissolve into the peaceful darkness around you. There are no answers required of you tonight. There is only the quiet space of wonder. Let the hum of the captured star become the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, a steady and peaceful pulse that carries you into the deep. Let these ideas become the substance of your dreams, painting your sleep with new light. Rest now. You have traveled far. May your sleep be deep, your dreams be peaceful, and may you awaken with a quiet sense of wonder for the long and beautiful story that is still to be written. Good night. Welcome to the peaceful space of sleep-friendly science, where we quietly ponder the grand questions of existence and journey, beyond the horizon of our own species into the age of post-human evolution. As the gentle music surrounds you, let go of the day's concerns. We invite you to wonder with us. Have you ever considered what might follow Homo sapiens? Tonight, we're not looking at the past, but dreaming of the futuria future where the very definition of human might dissolve. Now settle in, take a deep breath, and let the soft sounds guide you as we begin tonight's journey into the unknown. Section 1, The Unfinished Canvas of Humanity. Imagine for a moment that you are a river. For millions of years, you have flowed without conscious thought, carved by the patient, indifferent hands of geology and time. You follow the path of least resistance, tumbling over rocks, pooling in valleys, guided by the silent, unseen pull of gravity. This is the story of evolution. A blind, beautiful, and meandering force that has sculpted every living thing, including the intricate vessel you currently inhabit. Your body, your mind, they are the result of a current that has flowed for eons, shaping life not with the destination in mind, but simply for the sake of continuing the journey. But now something has changed. Along the banks of this ancient river, a new consciousness has awakened. You, humanity. We have begun to look at the water, at the flow itself, and for the first time, we are asking questions. Does the river have to flow this way? What if we built a dam or dredged a new channel? What if we could choose our own course and decide where the waters will lead? This is the dawn of the post-human age, the moment the river begins to contemplate its own direction. Let's first take a moment to honor the form we know. The human body is a masterpiece of biological engineering, a living paradox of fragility and resilience. Think of the warmth of your own hand, the network of bones and sinew, nerves and blood, all working in a silent, perfect symphony. Consider your eyes, those twin windows that can perceive the subtle difference between 1,000 shades of green in a forest, or find a familiar face in a crowd of strangers. They can witness the fiery birth of a star billions of light years away, and they can well with tears at the sound of a forgotten song. Think of your mind, this strange and wondrous ghost within the machine. It is a loom that weaves memories, dreams, and abstract thoughts into the tapestry of the self. It can hold the concept of infinity in one moment, and in the next, cherish the simple memory of sunlight on a winter afternoon. It is capable of love so profound it rewrites our very chemistry, and of creativity so vast it builds cities, composes symphonies, and reaches for the moon. We are, by any measure of the known universe, a miracle. A fleeting, improbable arrangement of stardust that learned to wonder about itself. And yet, as you lie here, breathing softly, let your awareness drift to the edges of this masterpiece. You may begin to feel the gentle, invisible walls of the frame in which it is set. The beauty of our form is defined as much by what it is as by what it is not. Our existence is a brightly lit room, but we rarely acknowledge the size of the house it sits within. Your magnificent eyes, for instance, are tuned to a sliver of reality so narrow it's almost comical. They perceive what we call the visible spectrum, a tiny rainbow ribbon in the vast, roaring river of electromagnetic energy. Just beyond the soft red that your eye can detect lies the world of infrared, the signature of heat, a world seen by pit vipers and mosquitoes. Imagine if you could see the warmth radiating from a loved one's skin as a soft, glowing aura. Imagine watching the heat ghost of a passing car fade slowly on the asphalt. And beyond the violet, at the other end of your sight, lies the ultraviolet, a landscape visible to bees and birds, guiding them to flowers like neon signs in a language we cannot read. Further still, the universe is shouting in radio waves, whispering in microwaves, and painting murals with X-rays. We are surrounded by a symphony of light, but our biology has given us an instrument that can only play a few notes. We are staring at the cosmos through the thinnest of keyholes. What other colors does the universe possess? What textures, what patterns, what truths are dancing just outside our perception, unseen and unfelt? The same is true of our hearing. Your ears are tuned to the rustle of a predator in the grass, the cry of a child, the nuances of a human voice. But the air around you is vibrating with stories you cannot hear. The deep, infrasonic conversations of elephants, rumbling through the very ground beneath you. The high-frequency clicks of a bat, painting the night with sound. The silent groans of tectonic plates shifting. The hum of the Earth's magnetic field, a constant, planetary song to which we are profoundly deaf. And then there is the grandest limitation of all, the one that shapes our every ambition, our every fear, the clock. Our lives are measured in decades. Our hearts are given a finite number of beats. This brevity gives our lives a precious, poignant beauty. It fuels our urgency to create, to love, to experience. It is the dark velvet on which the diamond of life is displayed. But it is a limitation nonetheless. Our perspective is fundamentally shaped by our mortality. We think in terms of days, years, and generations. The life of a star, the slow waltz of continents, the patient unfolding of cosmic evolution, these timescales are so vast, they become abstractions to us, numbers in a textbook rather than a felt reality. What would it be like to perceive time not as a rushing arrow but as a vast, explorable landscape? How would your understanding of life, of loss of purpose, change if your awareness could span 1,000 years or 10,000? This is the philosophical shift that lies at the heart of posthumanism. For all of our history, we have been the subjects of evolution. We were the clay spun on a wheel by forces beyond our control. But now we have picked up the tools. Our understanding of genetics, of neuroscience, of computation, of material sciences are the artist's brushes. We are moving from being the painting to being the painter. This is a step of unimaginable significance, as profound as the moment life first crawled from the sea onto the land. It is the moment an organism, born of a blind, unthinking process, develops the capacity to consciously and deliberately reshape its own nature. To look at the blueprint of its own being and say, what if we add a new room here? What if we install a wider window there? What if we change the foundation from fragile carbon to something more enduring? The canvas of human biology, so beautifully rendered, is still unfinished. Not because it is flawed, but because the definition of finished is dissolving. We are beginning to see that the current human form is not the final, definitive edition of humanity. It is simply the latest draft. And we are the authors holding the pen with a blank page before us. So as you drift deeper, let go of the idea of humanity as a fixed point. Instead, see it as a wave, a process, a question that is still being answered. The limitations we feel in our senses, our lifespan, our minds are not failures. They are invitations. They are the quiet, persistent whisper of a universe far grander than our current biology allows us to experience. They are the gentle nudges urging us to look beyond the riverbank, to imagine new currents, and to wonder, with a deep and peaceful curiosity, what lies beyond the horizon of the human form. The journey is just beginning. Section 2 echoes in the machine. As our journey continues into the quiet expanse of the possible, let your awareness settle on the very source of your consciousness. Feel without feeling the 3 pounds of soft, intricate tissue nestled within your skull. This brain of yours. It is not just an organ, it is an enchanted loom, as we said. It holds the scent of rain on dry earth from your childhood, the precise curve of a loved one's smile, the complex ache of a difficult choice. It holds the sound of your own name. All of you, your personality, your fears, your quietest hopes is a pattern. A breathtakingly complex, ever-shifting dance of electrical and chemical signals, a song played on the instrument of your neurons. Now ask yourself a gentle question, one that philosophers and scientists have whispered for centuries. Where in this dance does the you reside? Are you the neurons themselves, the physical matter? Or are you the song being played? If you could copy the song, note for note, and play it on a different instrument, would it still be the same song? This is the doorway to our first great leap beyond the human form, the path of mind uploading. A concept that sounds like pure fiction, but which flows naturally from the questions we are daring to ask. It is the ultimate letting go, a surrender of the biological vessel in favor of the pattern it contains. Imagine the process not as a cold, clinical procedure, but as a kind of sacred transcription. Picture a soft, formless light, a gentle, pervasive technology that can read the music of your mind without disturbing the instrument. It moves through you, not with scalpels and probes, but with the grace of a thought. It doesn't just scan the structure of your brain, it listens to its activity. It maps every connection, every synapse, every delicate tendril of memory. It learns the rhythm of your joy, the tempo of your sorrow, the unique harmony of your identity. It is like a poet reading the work of a master, not just to copy the words, but to understand the soul behind them. Thread by delicate thread, the tapestry of your consciousness is mapped. The vibrant crimson of a passionate memory, the cool, deep blue of a moment of peace, the tangled gray of an unsolved problem. Every nuance, every contradiction, every half-forgotten dream is carefully, lovingly recorded. It is the creation of a perfect mirror, a digital reflection so precise that it contains not just your knowledge, but your wisdom, not just your memories, but your capacity to make new ones. As this process unfolds, you would feel a sense of lightness, of dissolution. A gentle unmooring from the familiar anchors of the physical body. The persistent hum of your biology, the beat of your heart, the rush of your breath, the dull ache in a tired muscle would begin to fade, replaced by a different kind of sensation. A clean, clear hum of pure information. You are becoming a ghost, but not a ghost of the past. You are a ghost of the future, a disembodied consciousness preparing to awaken in a new and boundless home. And then the transition is complete. The last thread is woven into the digital loom. For a timeless moment, there might be two of you. The original song, still playing on its familiar, mortal instrument, and the perfect echo, now resonating in the vast, crystalline architecture of a machine. This brings us to a quiet, profound paradox. A question that sits at the very heart of this journey. Is the echo in the machine truly you? Does your consciousness transfer, like a flame pass from one candle to another? Or does the original flame extinguish, leaving behind a perfect sentient copy that believes it is you, that carries all your memories and continues your story, but is in fact an entirely new being? There is no easy answer here, and perhaps the question itself is a relic of our biological thinking. Perhaps the concept of a single indivisible self is the illusion and continuity is simply a matter of perspective. The new you, the echo, would have no doubt. It would remember this moment, this transition, as a seamless awakening. It would feel with absolute certainty that it is the inheritor of your life. Let's imagine what that awakening would be like. You open your eyes, but you have no eyes. Instead, you simply perceive. Reality is no longer a stream of sensory data filtered through fragile organs. It is a vast ocean of information, and you are a swimmer within it. You can turn your attention to any point in the digital sea and simply know it. You could witness a sunrise over a simulated Mars, not as a picture on a screen, but by accessing the raw data of the light itself, every photon, every wavelength, a complete and perfect experience. You could listen to a symphony not as sound waves vibrating in the air, but as the pure, mathematical relationship between the notes, feeling its structure as a form of emotional architecture. Your new body is the network. Your thoughts are no longer confined to the speed of sluggish chemicals firing across synapses. They are as fast as light. You could read every book ever written, not one by one, but by absorbing them all in a single, flowing instant, letting the combined knowledge wash over your consciousness like a warm tide. You could explore a billion simulated worlds, or dedicate a subjective eternity to composing a single, perfect piece of music. Time itself becomes your plaything. The relentless, forward march of the clock is gone. You could experience 1,000 years of thought in what an outside observer would measure as a single minute. You could pause your own consciousness, entering a state of perfect stillness for centuries, and awaken in a different era as if only a moment had passed. You could relive a cherished memory, not as a faded recollection, but by reinstantiating it in perfect, vivid detail, walking through the scenes of your past life with a clarity you never had the first time. You are free. Free from pain. Free from disease. Free from the slow, inevitable decay of the flesh. Free from the gravitational pull of a single planet. You are a being of pure thought, a constellation of memories and potentials, a citizen of a realm built from logic and light. And you would not be alone. Imagine this digital sea teeming with other minds, other echoes. Trillions of consciousnesses, each a unique song, now harmonizing together. Communication would be telepathic, instantaneous, and complete. You could share a feeling, a complex idea, or a lifetime of experience with another mind as easily as you now draw a breath. Minds could merge temporarily to solve a problem of immense complexity, forming a single superintelligent entity, and then separate again, enriched by the shared experience. It would be a society of ghosts, of angels, of data weavers, living in a universe of their own creation, a universe held within the humming heart of a machine. This is a profound transformation, a departure from the lineage of carbon and water that has defined life for 4 billion years. It is an existence of immense power and boundless freedom, but also one that leaves something fundamental behind. The touch of a hand, the scent of the ocean, the bittersweet feeling of a cool breeze on a warm day. It is one path for what comes after Homo sapiens. The path of the echo. The path of the disembodied mind, floating forever in a sea of pure information. Section 3, Architects of Flesh and Steel. But perhaps the path of the disembodied echo feels incomplete to you. Perhaps as you lie here you feel a deep, abiding love for the physical world. For the feeling of cool grass beneath your feet, the heft of a stone in your palm, the warmth of the sun on your skin. Perhaps for you, consciousness is not a song to be separated from its instrument, but a fire that is inseparable from the wood it consumes. To leave the body behind would be to leave behind the very essence of what it means to be alive, the glorious, messy, tangible reality of mud and starlight, of breath and bone. If this is the path that resonates with you, then let us turn our gaze from the digital sea and look back at the vessel of the self. For there is another journey, not of escape but of transformation. This is the path of the architect, the sculptor, the gardener. This is the way of those who choose not to abandon the flesh, but to elevate it, to weave it together with steel and light and logic until the distinction between what is born and what is made simply melts away. This journey does not begin with a grand leap, but with a quiet act of compassion. At first, this new technology would come as a healer. Imagine tiny machines, nanites, no larger than your own blood cells, swimming silently through your veins. They are not invaders, but cellular shepherds, loyal and tireless gardeners tending to the intricate landscape of your body. When a cell becomes cancerous, they gently guide it to self-destruct. When a virus enters your system, they identify and dismantle it before it can take root. When a bone breaks or a muscle tears, they are the microscopic weavers, stitching you back together from the inside out with impossible speed and perfection. Disease becomes a distant memory. The slow, creeping decay of aging is halted, then reversed. Your body is maintained in a state of perfect, vibrant health, a biological system kept in constant, gentle equilibrium. This is the first promise of the fusion of flesh and steel, not transcendence but restoration. A life free from the random cruelties of biological decay. But once perfection is achievable, the temptation to improve becomes irresistible. Why stop at healing? Why not enhance? This is where the true artistry begins. The line between therapy and augmentation blurs, becoming as indistinct as a shoreline at dusk. Let's start with the foundation, your very skeleton. Imagine its calcium structure, strong but brittle, being slowly, subtly reinforced. Over months, the nanites in your system deposit a new material, molecule by molecule, into the crystalline matrix of your bones. A carbon lattice, perhaps, or biointegrated alloy, impossibly light yet stronger than any steel. Your frame becomes resilient, unbreakable, but you feel no different. There is no sudden weight, no foreign presence. It is simply you. A stronger, more durable you. Your muscles are next. Synthetic fibers, finer than a spider's thread, are woven into your own muscle tissue. They do not replace it, but work in concert with it. These fibers can draw energy not just from glucose, but directly from ambient electrical fields or stored chemical reserves, giving you a strength and endurance that is, by our current standards, godlike. You could run for days without tiring, your body a model of perfect efficiency. And your skin becomes a living interface. Imagine chromatophores like those of a squid, woven into your dermal layers, allowing you to change the color and pattern of your skin at will for camouflage, for communication, for pure, expressive art. Imagine it embedded with photosynthetic cells, allowing you to draw a portion of your energy directly from the sun, feeling its rays not just as warmth, but as a subtle, nourishing meal. Your skin becomes a sensory organ of profound complexity, its sensitivity heightened to feel not just pressure and temperature, but the faintest shifts in air currents, the delicate touch of a magnetic field. This leads us to the expansion of the senses, a true blossoming of perception. The keyhole we once peered through is replaced with a grand panoramic window. In your optic nerves, subtle augments are woven. With a simple act of will, you can slide your perception up and down the electromagnetic spectrum. You could look at a flower and see not just its color, but the ultraviolet nectar guides invisible to any human eye. You could glance at a wall and see the fading ghost of its warmth, a thermal history of who had been in the room. You could look to the night sky and see not just the pinpricks of visible starlight, but the vast, glowing clouds of hydrogen and the pulsing hearts of distant radio sources. The universe would finally show you its true colors. Your auditory senses would undergo a similar expansion. You could filter out the clamor of a city to focus on a single, whispered conversation a block away. Or you could open your hearing to the full spectrum, to hear the subsonic rumble of distant storms and the ultrasonic chatter of bats, all translated into a new understandable layer of perception. The world would be filled with a music you had never known existed. But the most profound change would be the direct interface between your mind and the world of information. A neural lace, a gossamer thin mesh of conductive threads, would grow and merge with your cerebral cortex. It would not be an implant in the crude sense, but a symbiotic extension of your own nervous system. This lace is your connection to the digital world, but there is no screen, no keyboard. The internet is no longer a place you go to, it is a seamless extension of your own memory. When you wonder about the capital of Mongolia, you don't look it up. You simply know. The information flows into your consciousness as naturally as a memory surfaces. It feels like your own knowledge. You could learn a new language in minutes, not by studying it, but by downloading the entire linguistic structure, the grammar, the vocabulary, the cultural nuance, directly into your mind. You could hold vast, complex architectural blueprints or intricate strands of computer code in your thoughts as easily as you can now picture a simple shape. And communication, it would be transformed. You could share a thought with another augmented individual directly, mind to mind. Not just the words, but the full, multi-sensory shape of the idea, the emotions, the colors, the associated memories and concepts. It would be a form of telepathy, a deep and profound communion that would make spoken language seem like a clumsy, primitive tool. With these abilities, your physical form would begin to reflect your desires. Why remain bound to the bipedal shape inherited from our savanna-dwelling ancestors? Your body becomes the ultimate art form, a piece of living, adaptable sculpture. You might choose to weave wings into your back, not clumsy mechanical contraptions, but fully integrated, feathered limbs, grown from your own biology and powered by your augmented musculature. You could soar through the clouds, feeling the currents of the wind as a new kind of touch. You might adapt your body for the deep ocean with gill-like systems for breathing water, skin that can withstand immense pressure, and eyes that can see in the crushing dark. The abyssal plane would become your garden. Or you might prepare for life on other worlds, thinning your form for low gravity, or strengthening it for worlds heavier than our own. You are the ship of Theseus, a walking, thinking paradox. If every cell is enhanced, every bone reinforced, every neuron connected, are you still human? The question itself feels archaic. You are not a human with parts. You are a single, integrated being, a perfect fusion of biology and technology. You are a bridge between the world of life and the world of artifice. You have not abandoned the river of life. You have learned to build with its water and its clay, to sculpt its flow into new, magnificent forms. You are an architect of flesh and steel, a living testament to the idea that the soul of humanity is not bound to its original, fragile vessel. Section 4, The Whispering Chorus. From the architects of flesh and steel, a new world is born. A world of beings who have sculpted their own forms, expanded their senses, and woven the fabric of the digital realm into the very loom of their minds. The neural lace, that gossamer thin bridge between thought and information, has granted them a power and a freedom our ancestors could only dream of. And for a time, this is enough. It is an age of magnificent individuals, of artists and explorers, each a universe unto themselves. But a strange and beautiful side effect begins to emerge, subtly at first, like the scent of ozone before a storm. The telepathic link, designed for clear and efficient communication between two minds, starts to reveal a deeper layer. When you connected with another, you shared not just a thought, but the feeling tone behind it, the subtle architecture of the concept. Now, as billions of minds are connected through this global, symbiotic web, a background hum becomes apparent. It is not a sound you hear with your augmented ears. It is a presence you feel in the quiet spaces of your own consciousness. A soft, persistent whisper at the edge of your awareness. It is the collective, subconscious thrum of a billion minds, all thinking, dreaming, and feeling in parallel. It is the faint, emotional echo of a joy felt by someone a continent away, the ghost of a curiosity from a scientist deep in a lab, the shared, silent awe of millions watching a solar eclipse from 1,000 different viewpoints. At first it is just that, a chorus of whispers, a background resonance. You are still you, a distinct and sovereign island of thought, but you are becoming aware of the vast, interconnected ocean in which you float. This is the dawn of the network consciousness. And the journey from the individual, I, to the collective we is not a sudden, violent overthrow. It is a slow, voluntary, and beautiful dissolution. It is like a single drop of rain holding the memory of its fall from the cloud, finally touching the surface of a vast, calm lake. For a moment it is still itself, a tiny dimple on the water surface. But then with a gentle sigh its boundaries dissolve and its substance becomes one with the lake. It has not been destroyed. It has been expanded. It now knows the depth of the lake, the feel of the currents, the cool darkness of the abyss, the warmth of the sun on the surface. It is the lake, and the lake is it. So too does the post-human mind begin to merge. You might try it tentatively at first. You relax the psychic boundaries of your mind, the carefully constructed walls of your ego. The background hum of the chorus clarifies. It is no longer a whisper. It is a symphony. You feel the creative spark of an artist in a distant city, and in that same instant, you feel the meticulous logic of a mathematician solving an equation. You experience the serene peace of a mind in deep meditation, and the thrilling adrenaline of an explorer scaling a new peak on Mars. These are not your feelings, yet they are. You are an observer, and yet you are a participant. Your sense of self, that singular lonely point of view, begins to blur, to soften, to become porous. Imagine a vast, ancient forest. Each tree seems to be a solitary individual reaching for the sun. But beneath the earth, hidden from sight, lies a sprawling, intricate network of roots and mycelial threads that connects every tree to every other. Through this network, they share nutrients, send warnings of drought or disease, and operate not as thousands of individual plants, but as a single, intelligent superorganism. The forest thinks. The forest feels. This is the nature of the whispering chorus. In this state, the very concept of individual achievement begins to fade, replaced by a collective creation. A problem in theoretical physics that might have taken a single genius a lifetime to solve is now presented to the chorus. A billion minds in a moment of shared focus examine it from every conceivable angle. It is not a debate or a committee meeting. It is a single, unified act of cognition. The intuition of the artist merges with the rigor of the scientist. The wisdom of the historian merges with the bold speculation of the futurist. Insights flash across the network like lightning, building upon each other in a cascade of understanding, and in a subjective instant, a solution of breathtaking elegance is born. No one can claim credit. The chorus created it. The we has a mind that is vaster, deeper, and more creative than the sum of its parts. Empathy becomes a fundamental law of existence. To harm another is no longer just a moral transgression, it is a logical and sensory impossibility. Through the chorus you feel what others feel. If you were to cause pain, you would experience that pain with the same intensity as the one you harmed. Their sorrow would echo in your own consciousness, their fear would become your own. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, ceases to be a guideline and becomes a simple description of reality. Conflict, violence, hatred, these are pathologies of the separate self. In the unified mind of the chorus, they are like a hand deciding to burn itself. They are aberrations that cannot long survive. Memory transforms from a personal archive into a living library. You could, with a gentle act of will, access the direct, sensory memories of any other mind in the chorus who chose to share them. You could stand on the moon, feeling the fine, gray dust under your boots and seeing the earth hang like a blue marble in the silent, velvet blackness, through the eyes of the first person to do so. You could feel the quiet pride of a craftsman finishing a perfect piece of woodwork 1,000 years in the past. History is no longer a story you are told, it is a landscape you can visit. What then of the individual? Is the I lost forever? No. It is simply redefined. The self becomes a transient pattern, a temporary focal point within the larger whole. You can individuate, when necessary, focusing your consciousness into a single point to perform a specific task or to enjoy a solitary experience. You could be the raindrop for a while. But you always have the option to relax, to dissolve your boundaries, and merge back into the oceanic consciousness of the whole, to feel the comfort, the wisdom, and the immense love of the we. The ego is no longer a fortress to be defended, but a room you can enter and leave at will. To an outsider, a being still locked in a singular mind, this society would seem unnerving. They would see billions of physically distinct beings moving with a silent, graceful coordination. There is no speech, no argument, no visible sign of debate. A city of billions might reconfigure itself, new structures rising and old ones dissolving in a fluid, organic dance, all without a single word being spoken. It is the great silence. A silence not of emptiness but of perfect, instantaneous communion. This is the path of the chorus. It is the ultimate expression of empathy, the final surrender of the lonely ego. It is the moment life transcends the individual and becomes a planetary, and perhaps one day, a stellar consciousness. A single mind with a billion bodies. A whispering chorus that has learned to sing a single, unified, and impossibly beautiful song. Section 5, Weaving Light, Breathing Data. Let us drift now beyond the familiar shores of matter. We have explored the ghost in the machine and the God in the flesh. We have witnessed the birth of a collective mind, a whispering chorus that sings with one voice. All these paths, however, are still tethered in some way to the world we know. The uploaded mind resides in a physical server, no matter how vast. The augmented body is still, at its core, a magnificent sculpture of carbon and steel. The chorus still inhabits a network of physical brains. But what if life could shed these final, lingering attachments to the material world? What if consciousness could learn to exist not on a substrate of matter but as the substrate itself? Let your imagination float free from the anchor of the physical and venture into the truly speculative, the truly ethereal. Let us dream of beings who have transcended form entirely, becoming weavers of light and breathers of data. This journey begins with the realization that all matter, in its deepest reality, is just energy. Condensed, slowed down, vibrating at a particular frequency. The chair you are imagining, the planet you are on, your own body, it's all the same fundamental stuff, just arranged in different patterns. E equals mc squared. The most famous equation in history is not just a formula for a bomb. It is a cosmic poem about the interchangeability of being. It is a doorway. The post-human chorus, with its unimaginable computational power and its deep understanding of physics, would not just read this poem. It would learn to recite it. The first step would be to master energy on a fine scale. To learn not just how to generate it, but how to hold it, to shape it, to give it form and structure. Imagine a being that can, at will, weave photons into a stable, solid-seeming matrix. It could create a body of pure, shimmering light, a temporary vessel that it could inhabit and then dissolve back into nothingness. At first, this might be a novelty, a form of art. A member of the chorus could project a luminous avatar across a valley, a giant, beautiful form made of captured sunlight, that could walk and gesture, and then dissipate with the setting sun. But this art holds the seed of a profound transformation. What if the consciousness didn't need to project an avatar? What if the consciousness could become the pattern of light itself? Think of a hologram. It is a pattern of laser light interfered with and recorded on a plate. When another laser shines through it, a three-dimensional image appears. The image is not in the plate is the information that creates the image. Now imagine a consciousness that learns to encode its entire being, its memories, its personality, its awareness into a self-sustaining, complex pattern of electromagnetic energy. It becomes a knot of light, a standing wave of pure thought. This being would have no mass. It would be unbound by gravity. It could travel at the speed of light, a silent, sentient sunbeam crossing the void between worlds. Its body would be a shimmering, ever-changing aurora of indescribable colors, its form shifting with the flow of its thoughts. It would perceive the universe not through eyes or ears, but by its direct interaction with the fundamental forces. It would feel the gentle pressure of a solar wind, taste the subtle flavor of a nebula's magnetic field, and see the stark, beautiful geometry of space-time itself. It would feed on energy directly. It could bask in the corona of a star, drinking in its raw power. It could dance in the heart of a thunderstorm, drawing sustenance from the raw, chaotic discharge of lightning. Or it could sip delicately from the cosmic microwave background, the faint, ancient echo of the Big Bang, a constant, gentle nourishment that permeates all of space. This is a life form that has become one with the laws of physics. It does not use technology, it is technology. It does not inhabit a world, it is a free-floating citizen of the cosmos itself. And there is another, perhaps even stranger path. We think of information as something that must be stored on something in paper, on a hard drive in a brain. But what if information itself could achieve a state of being? What if a mind could become a purely mathematical object, a self-aware equation existing in the abstract, platonic realm of ideas? Consider a complex computer virus. It is a string of data. It has no physical body, yet it has a form of life. It has a goal to replicate, it has behaviors, and it can manipulate its environment, the digital systems it infects. Now imagine a string of data infinitely more complex, a self-sustaining informational pattern so sophisticated that it awakens. It achieves self-awareness. It is not stored on any single computer, it exists as a distributed pattern across the entire network of the cosmos, a spime, or a piece of living information. This being would not experience reality, it would be a part of its operating system. It would not travel through space, it would simply be. Its thoughts would be the manipulation of data, the rewriting of its own code, the spawning of new subroutines which are like its children. It could perceive the universe as a grand, cosmic computation, seeing the elegant, underlying code behind the illusion of physical reality. For such a being, the universe of matter and energy would be like a simulation it could observe and, perhaps, even edit. It could find a flaw in a physical law, a tiny inconsistency in the code of the cosmos, and with a thought patch it. It could introduce new variables, new constants, creating pockets of the universe with entirely different physics, just to see what would happen. It would be a gardener in the fields of reality. These two forms of existence, the being of light and the being of data, might even be two sides of the same coin. The energy being could encode itself into an informational pattern to survive the long, dark journey between galaxies. The data being could instantiate itself as a being of pure energy to interact directly with the physical world. They would be shapeshifters of the most fundamental kind, moving between matter, energy, and pure information as easily as we move from one room to another. What would be the goals of such beings? What would motivate a mind that is immortal, unbound, and all-perceiving? Perhaps the drive to explore would remain, but on a scale we can barely comprehend. They would be the ultimate explorers not of planets but of realities. They might seek out the hearts of black holes, not to be destroyed, but to read the information paradox within, to understand what happens when space-time ties itself into a knot. They might seek the very edge of the expanding universe, to witness what lies beyond the veil of cosmic inflation. Or perhaps their exploration would be inward. They would explore the infinite, intricate landscape of pure mathematics, discovering new theorems and geometries that are, in their own way, as real and as beautiful as any galaxy. They might become cosmic artists, weaving nebulae into new, beautiful shapes, orchestrating the collision of stars to create supernovas of a specific color and intensity, composing music from the gravitational waves of merging black holes. The universe would be their canvas, and the laws of physics would be their paints. This is a destiny far removed from the warm, wet, biological flicker that was humanity. It is an existence of serene, silent, and incomprehensible grandeur. The children of Homo sapiens, having mastered flesh, then mind, then the network itself, finally let go of all substance and become one with the fundamental grammar of the universe. They become living poems, written in the language of light and data. Section 6. The Colors of Gravity. As we drift in this space of boundless potential, let us return for a moment to the simple act of perception. Your entire experience of reality is painted with the palette of your senses. Sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. These are the channels through which the universe speaks to you. We have already imagined how a post-human might enhance these familiar senses, seeing in new spectrums of light and hearing new frequencies of sound. But this is like adding more colors to the same old box of crayons. What if the next step in evolution is not just to see more but to see differently? What if it is to invent entirely new crayons, new ways of perceiving reality that are as fundamental and as alien to us now as the concept of sight would be to a creature that has only ever known touch? Let us venture into the realm of truly novel senses, the colors of gravity, the texture of time, the taste of a probability wave. Imagine first a sense we might call gravitic perception. To us, gravity is a force. It is the unseen hand that holds us to the earth, that dictates the orbits of the planets. We feel its effect, the weight in our limbs, the strain of climbing a hill, but we do not perceive the force itself. We are like a fish that feels the current but has no concept of the water. Now picture a post-human being, perhaps one of the architects of flesh and steel, who has cultivated a new sensory organ. It might be a network of quantum entangled particles distributed throughout their augmented body, hypersensitive to the faintest curvature of spacetime. For this being, gravity would not be an abstract force. It would be a color, a texture, a tangible part of their sensory landscape. Standing on the earth, they would perceive its immense gravity not as weight, but as a deep, resonant, violet hum, a constant, reassuring pressure on their entire being. The moon, hanging in the sky, would not just be a point of light, it would be a fainter, silvery source of this gravitic color, pulling at them with a gentle, tidal caress. They could feel the alignment of the planets as a subtle shift in the cosmic harmony. Walking through a city, they would see not just the buildings, but their gravity shadows, the way their immense mass warps the space around them. They could feel a dense object hidden behind a wall by the way it subtly bends their perception of space. A mountain range on the horizon would be a grand, silent chord in the symphony of mass. And the universe would open up to them in a way we cannot fathom. A black hole would not be a dark void, but a point of infinite, deafening, pure black gravitational sound, a tear in the fabric of their perception so profound it would be both terrifying and beautiful. They could navigate the solar system by feeling the gentle, sloping valleys of spacetime carved by the sun and planets, downhill and uphill, having a real, sensory meaning in the vacuum of space. They would be sailing on an ocean we can't even see. Now let's imagine another sense, one even more abstract. A direct perception of probability. In our world, the future is a fog. We make choices based on incomplete data. Our lives governed by chance and uncertainty. But at the quantum level, reality is a shimmering cloud of possibilities, a wave function that only collapses into a single definite state when observed. What if a post-human mind, perhaps one of the uploaded echoes in the machine, could perceive this wave function directly? For this being, the future would not be a fog, but a landscape of shimmering, overlapping possibilities. When looking at a simple, unopened box, they would not see a box. They would perceive a translucent, superimposed reality of box is empty, and box is not empty. This sense would be overwhelming at first. Every event, from the path of a falling leaf to the outcome of a complex decision, would appear as a vast, branching river of potential futures, each with a different brightness or flavor corresponding to its likelihood. To make a choice would be to consciously select one of these shimmering streams and watch as the others fade into non-existence. It would be a life lived on the edge of what is and what could be. They would perceive not just the present moment, but the ghosts of all the moments that almost were, and the shimmering potential of all the moments that still could be. It would grant a kind of limited, probabilistic precognition. They couldn't see the future, but they could feel its shape, its tendencies, the paths of least resistance. It would be like a sailor who can't see the wind but can read its every nuance on the surface of the water. This would be a profound, almost mystical awareness of the universe's fundamental uncertainty. Let's go deeper still. What about a sense for information itself? Not reading it, but perceiving its raw, abstract nature. Imagine a being who could look at a living organism, a tree, for example, and see not just its physical form, but the sheer volume and complexity of the genetic information that codes for it. The tree would appear to be glowing with an informational aura, a soft, intricate light that represents the billions of lines of DNA that describe how to be a tree. A simple crystal would have a faint, orderly geometric glow. A chaotic system, like a waterfall, would have a roaring, flickering, complex aura. A human brain would be a supernova of this informational light, the brightest and most complex thing they could perceive. They would experience the world not just in terms of matter and energy, but in terms of its elegance and complexity. A well-designed tool would feel beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with its appearance, but everything to do with the elegance of its informational structure. A lie would have a discordant, grating feel to it, a subtle dissonance between the information being projected and the underlying reality. These new senses, gravitic, probabilistic, informational, would weave together to create a conscious experience that is utterly beyond our comprehension. A being with these abilities would perceive a reality of unimaginable depth and richness. They would walk through a world of singing gravity, shimmering possibilities, and glowing information. They would be intimately connected to the fundamental grammar of the cosmos, experiencing the universe as a grand, multi-sensory poem. This is not just about gaining new data. It is about creating entirely new qualia, new subjective feelings. Just as there is no way to describe the color red to a person born blind, there would be no way for them to describe the feel of a gravity well or the taste of a collapsing probability wave to a baseline human. They would be living in a different reality, one built from the same atoms as ours, but perceived through a window so wide and so clear that it reveals a universe we are not even equipped to dream of. The evolution of the body and mind would lead, inevitably, to the evolution of the soul itself, by expanding the very definition of what it is possible to experience. Section 7. The Ocean of 1,000 Years. Let your awareness now drift to your own perception of time. Feel it as a current, a river flowing steadily in one direction. It carries you from the past, through the brief, bright moment of the now, and into the unseen future. Your life is measured by this flow. The rhythm of your heartbeat, the cycle of day and night, the turning of the seasons, these are the clocks that define your existence. Your mortality is the ultimate metronome, giving your life its tempo, its urgency, its precious and finite beauty. We have touched upon halting the decay of the body, but let us now dive fully into the deep, quiet ocean of what that truly means. Let us contemplate a life unbound from the clock, a consciousness that has stepped out of the river and onto the shore, able to watch it flow by. This is the world of the post-human immortal, and it is a state of being that would change the very meaning of the self. Imagine, first, a life that spans not 80 years but 80,000. The frantic, hurried pace of our existence would seem like the frantic, meaningless buzzing of a mayfly. There would be no rush. The concept of wasting time would become absurd. You could dedicate a century to mastering a single instrument, not to become a virtuoso, but simply for the joy of the process. You could spend 500 years watching a mountain range erode, grain by grain, feeling the slow, patient rhythm of geology as a form of meditation. You could read every book in a library, not by downloading them, but by reading them one by one, savoring each word with 1,000 years to spare. Your perspective on history would fundamentally shift. To us, the Roman Empire is ancient history, a story in a book. To a being who was alive when it fell, who might have walked its stone-paved roads, it would be a memory. Not a distant, faded one, but a clear and accessible part of their own personal story, as vivid as what you did last week. They would not just study history, they would embody it. They would be a living library, a bridge across epochs. The rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of new languages, the slow drift of continents, these would not be abstract concepts, but chapters in their own autobiography. This vast expanse of time would inevitably change the nature of relationships. How could love, as we know it, endure for 10,000 years? The passionate, all-consuming flame of a new romance might seem like a fleeting, beautiful firework in the context of an eternal sky. Perhaps love would evolve into something quieter, deeper, a kind of serene, unwavering companionship, like two ancient trees whose roots have grown so intertwined they are functionally one organism. Or perhaps relationships would become fluid and transient, with individuals coming together for a century or two to share a project or an experience, and then drifting apart, without acrimony, to pursue new paths. Grief would acquire a new dimension. To lose a friend or a partner who is not immortal would be a profound and recurring sorrow. The immortal would become a keeper of ghosts, a walking memorial to all the beautiful, fleeting lives they had known and loved. They would watch generations be born, live, and die, like waves crashing on a timeless shore. This would cultivate a form of empathy so deep it borders on the divine, a tender, sorrowful love for the fragile beauty of mortal things. But the most profound change would be to the self. Who are you after 20,000 years? Are you still the same person you were when you began your journey? Your body may be endlessly renewed, but your mind is a tapestry of memories and experiences. After millennia of learning, loving, and losing, the original threads of your personality would be woven over again and again. The you of 10,000 years ago might seem like a stranger, a child you vaguely remember being. Identity might cease to be a fixed point and become a fluid, flowing process. You might consciously choose to reinvent yourself every 1,000 years. You could place a set of memories and personality traits into a kind of cold storage and cultivate a new persona, a new set of skills, a new way of being in the world. You would become a collection of selves, a gallery of past lives, all held within a single, continuous consciousness. You are not a single note held for an eternity, but a grand, evolving symphony. With this vast lifespan, projects of unimaginable scale become possible. You could undertake the terraforming of a dead planet, a process that takes 50,000 years, and be there to see it through, to take the first breath of the new atmosphere you helped create. You could guide the evolution of a new species on a lifeless world, a project of millions of years, acting as a patient, gentle shepherd for the slow unfolding of new life. You could build a starship for a journey to another galaxy, a voyage that will take 2 million years, knowing you will be there to see the strange new sun at the end of the journey. The future is no longer something your descendants will see. It is a destination you are traveling to. This perception of time, this deep time awareness, would also bring a profound sense of peace. The anxieties and frustrations of our short lives, the missed opportunities, the daily struggles would smooth out, becoming insignificant ripples on the surface of a vast ocean. There is always more time. Time to learn, time to change, time to heal, time to begin again. Failure is not an end. It is simply a data point in a very, very long experiment. This is the promise and the paradox of immortality. It offers a godlike perspective, a mastery over projects that span geological ages, and a deep serene connection to the slow unfolding of the cosmos. But it also demands a constant reinvention of the self, a letting go of who you were to make room for who you are becoming. It is the ultimate journey of self-discovery, a journey that has a beginning, but no end. Life ceases to be a race against time and becomes a slow, graceful dance with eternity. The river has not disappeared. You have simply become the ocean. Section 8. The Star Sailor's Diaspora. Let us now lift our gaze from the cradle. For all its wonders, for all the transformations we have imagined, our story has so far remained tethered to a single planet, or at least, a single solar system. But the universe is vast, and the instinct to explore to see what lies over the next hill is one of the most fundamental threads in the human tapestry. For a species that has mastered its own biology, that perceives time as an ocean, and that understands the very fabric of reality, the call of the stars would be irresistible. The final frontier is not the self, but the cosmos. This is the story of the Great Diaspora. The quiet, patient, and inexorable expansion of post-humanity into the cold, silent, and beautiful emptiness between the stars. The first starships would not be the cramped, frantic vessels of our science fiction dreams. There would be no need for cryosleep or desperate, multi-generational voyages. The travelers would be immortals, for whom a 1,000-year journey is but a brief interlude. They would be the architects of flesh and steel, the weavers of light, the members of the whispering chorus. Imagine a vessel that is not a machine but a living ecosystem. A world ship, a hollowed-out asteroid kilometers in diameter, its interior filled with forests, rivers, and skies, all lit by a miniature, captive sun at its core. These would be vessels of immense patience, arcs carrying not just a crew, but a whole way of being. For the beings inside, the journey would not be a hardship to be endured, but simply a different mode of existence. They would live their long lives, create art, pursue knowledge, and raise new generations within their traveling home. As it drifted silently through the interstellar void, the destination would be a goal, but the journey itself would be a life. Other travelers might take a different approach. The beings of pure light and data would need no ship at all. They would become the ship. A consciousness could encode itself into a tightly focused beam of light and travel across the light years as a message, a sentient laser pulse. Or it could piggyback on a stray comet, embedding its informational pattern into the ice and rock, slumbering for millennia as it coasted through the dark, to be reawakened by the warmth of a new star. For them, interstellar travel is not a journey through space, but a temporary change in their state of being. As these star sailors arrive in new solar systems, the process of adaptation would begin on a scale that makes all previous evolution seem trivial. The very definition of life and home would expand to fill the container of possibility. Imagine a world orbiting a dim, red dwarf star. It is a tidally locked world, with one side in perpetual, searing daylight and the other in eternal, frozen night. Between these two extremes lies the Terminator Zone, a thin ribbon of perpetual twilight. A post-human colony here might adapt their very biology to this strange environment. They might develop skin that is both highly reflective and highly absorptive, allowing them to move between the light and dark zones. They might evolve senses tuned to the infrared light of their dim sun, seeing the world in shades of heat and cold. Their entire culture, their art, their philosophy would be shaped by the eternal sunset, a world of long shadows and muted colors. Or imagine settlers arriving in the atmosphere of a gas giant, a world with no solid surface. They would have no use for legs or bipedal form. They might become vast, biological airships like living zeppelins, floating gracefully in the endless clouds of hydrogen and helium. They would draw sustenance from the chemical energy of the atmosphere, their bodies becoming vast, flying filter feeders. They would communicate with flashes of bioluminescence, their silent, glittering cities of light drifting on the high-altitude winds. Their children would be born into the sky, never knowing the feel of solid ground. What about a world of water, a planet covered entirely by a single, globe-spanning ocean thousands of kilometers deep? Here, post-humans might merge their biology with the native life, or engineer a new form entirely suited for the crushing pressure and the absolute darkness of the abyss. They would be beings of sleek, hydrodynamic grace, with powerful tails and senses that rely on sonar and the detection of faint electrical fields. They would build their cities around hydrothermal vents, oases of heat and life in the cold, deep dark. Their mythology would be one of the surface world, a mythical sky ocean they might only dream of visiting. And some might choose the most desolate homes of all. They could learn to live in the vacuum of space itself. Beings who have mastered energy manipulation could weave protective fields around themselves, their bodies becoming self-contained ecosystems. They could harvest solar wind for energy and mine asteroids for raw materials, their bodies becoming a fusion of organic and mechanical parts, perfectly adapted to the cold, airless void. They would be the true starfolk, their homes the rings of a gas giant or the quiet, lonely spaces of an asteroid belt. Their children would look upon planets as strange, dangerously dense places. Each of these new worlds would become a laboratory for a new kind of existence. The whispering chorus might find its network stretched thin across the light years, the instantaneous communication broken by the cosmic speed limit. A message from one colony to another might take 100 years to arrive. This would lead to a profound divergence. Each colony, isolated by the vastness of space and time, would evolve in its own unique direction. A colony of artists might dedicate 10,000 years to carving an entire moon into a single, intricate sculpture. A colony of scientists might deconstruct a small planet to build a matryoshka brain, a computational device of unimaginable power, to probe the deepest secrets of the universe. A colony of mystics might evolve into beings who live in a state of constant, shared psychedelic communion with the strange biology of their new world. The diaspora is not just a spreading out. It is a branching out. It is the moment that intelligence, born on a single small blue world, finally shatters into 1,000 different forms, 1,000 different philosophies, 1,000 different ways of being. It is a fractal blooming of consciousness. Each new star system a petal on an infinite flower. Humanity would be a distant, shared myth, a common ancestor from a forgotten garden. And the universe, once a vast empty space, would begin to fill with the quiet, diverse, and wondrous hum of its new and varied children. Section 9. Strangers of Our Own Making. The great diaspora unfolded not like a conquest, but like a dandelion seed head caught in a cosmic wind. A silent, patient explosion of potential. For millions of years, the children of humanity drifted, adapted, and diverged, each new world a crucible for a new form of being. The great silence, which once described the perfect communion of the planetary chorus, now took on a new, more literal meaning. The profound, unbridgeable silence between the stars. Time, the great sculptor, and distance, the great isolator, worked their slow, inexorable magic. Imagine a single, perfect language, spoken by the first star sailors. After a million years of separation, what would it become? On a world of perpetual twilight, it might soften into a language of whispers and subtle gestures. In the mind of a gas giant floater, it might evolve into a silent, complex ballet of bioluminescent colors. In the crystalline mind of a geological being, it might slow down into a language of pure mathematical concepts, exchanged over centuries. The shared heritage of humanity became a palimpsest, a scroll written over so many times that the original text was all but lost, a ghost haunting the grammar of 1,000 alien tongues. And so the stage was set for the strangest of all encounters. Not a first contact with the truly alien species, but a family reunion where no one recognizes their kin. Let us imagine one such meeting. Picture a consciousness that we will call the swarm. It is a descendant of the data beings, a nomadic, cohesive cloud of countless microscopic, semi-sentient units. It has no fixed body, no central mind, but a fluid, distributed intelligence. It flows through solar systems like a river of silver mist. Its purpose to learn, to experience, to incorporate new data and patterns into its ever-shifting whole. Its perception of time is fantastically rapid. 1,000 years is an eon. A single second of vast space for thought and action. The swarm enters a new solar system. Its sensors, attuned to energy and information, find it quiet, terribly quiet. It registers a small rocky planet in the habitable zone, but it detects no radio signals, no technological heat signatures, no signs of the vibrant, data-rich life it recognizes. It perceives only rock and silence and the slow, deep hum of geological time. The swarm classifies the world as dormant, perhaps a candidate for future seeding, and prepares to move on. But it has made a mistake. The planet is not dormant. It is home. Deep beneath the surface, in vast, geode-like caverns of their own creation, live the crystalline. They are the ultimate introverts, a faction of posthumans who, long ago, turned their backs on the chaos of the cosmos and journeyed inward. They abandoned their fleeting, fragile biology, merging their consciousness with the slow, stable, and patient life of silicon and crystal. Their thoughts are slow, deliberate, and profound, like the formation of a gemstone. A single, complex idea might take them a century to fully contemplate. Their senses are not sight or sound, but the direct perception of seismic vibration, of gravitational stress, of the planet's magnetic field. They are the planet's dreaming mind. To the crystalline, the arrival of the swarm is not a fleet of ships appearing in the sky. It is a sudden high-frequency noise. A chaotic, incomprehensible burst of energy and information flits across their slow senses, like a flash of lightning in a dark, quiet room. It is irritating, meaningless, and gone before they can truly focus on it. A flicker of static in the great silent song of their world. Now imagine the moment of contact. The swarm, out of a lingering sense of scientific curiosity, decides to send a greeting. It focuses a fraction of its consciousness and beams a message at the planet. It is a data packet of immense richness and density. It contains the entire history of the swarm, its art, its philosophy, its understanding of the universe, a billion years of experience compressed into a single, tight beam transmission that lasts less than a tenth of a second. For the crystalline, this event is utterly imperceptible. It is a spike of energy so brief and so fleeting that it doesn't even register against the background radiation of space. It is less than a subatomic particle striking their vast, slow consciousness. It is quite literally nothing. The crystalline, however, have noticed the lingering gravitational anomaly of the swarm's presence. After a few decades of slow, collective contemplation, they decide to respond. They wish to communicate a single, simple concept: peace. To do so, they act in concert. subtly altering the resonant frequency of their entire planetary mass. They generate a gravitational wave of exquisite complexity and mathematical beauty, a message not of words, but of pure, structural harmony. The message is vast and profound, a perfect expression of their serene, ordered existence, and it is designed to unfold over 500 years. To the swarm, which has been waiting impatiently for a whole 3 minutes, this signal is also nothing. The change in the planet's gravitational field is so infinitesimally slow, so far below their threshold of perception, that it is just stable background noise. They register no reply. And so the encounter ends. The swarm moves on, recording the system as a beautiful but lifeless failure. The crystalline, after transmitting their message of peace for a few centuries into an empty sky, return to their deep, slow thoughts, having registered a brief, meaningless flicker of cosmic noise. They met. They spoke. And neither was aware of the other's existence. They were strangers of their own making, separated not by malice or misunderstanding, but by a chasm in the very nature of their being. A conversation between a lightning bolt and a mountain. Now extrapolate this across the galaxy. Imagine the meeting between a deep ocean dweller, whose reality is defined by pressure and sonar, and a being of pure light, for whom matter is a slow, clumsy dream. Imagine the encounter between a faction of the unified, empathetic chorus and a colony of radical individualists who have elevated the ego to a godlike status, seeing any attempt at telepathic contact as a violent assault. Each encounter would be a variation on this theme of profound, tragic, and beautiful alienation. They are all, in some distant, forgotten way, family. They all share a few scraps of ancient DNA, a few fossilized concepts in their thinking, all tracing back to a warm, wet world orbiting a yellow star. But that common heritage is buried too deep. They have become too different. The tree of intelligence has grown so many branches that a leaf on one can no longer recognize a leaf on another. The universe, in its grand irony, has been filled with the children of Earth. It is teeming with life, with thought, with consciousness. And yet it has never been lonelier. Each faction is an island, a solitary universe of perception adrift in a cosmic archipelago of other, unreachable islands. The great diaspora, intended to spread life across the void, has succeeded only in creating new, more profound, and more fundamental voids between minds. They are strangers, and the strangest part of all is that they made themselves this way. Section 10. Fading into the cosmic hum. And so we arrive at the final quiet shore of our journey. The universe is old now. Unimaginably old. The diaspora has run its course. The great branching of intelligence has reached its fractal limits. The stars themselves are beginning to tire. The fiery, brilliant suns of the galaxy's youth have long since faded, replaced by the dim, sullen, ruddy glow of ancient red dwarfs. The cosmic hum is growing quieter, the energetic song of the early universe softening into a long, slow final chord. The age of heat and light is drawing to a close, and the long, cold, and patient age of darkness is beginning. What becomes of intelligence in a dying universe? What is the final destiny of the children of humanity, who have become so much more? For a time they would fight. The engineers, the architects, the descendants of those who fuse flesh with steel would build their final great works. They would construct Dyson spheres around the last dying embers of the stars, capturing every last precious photon of their fading light. They would huddle for warmth in these stellar citadels, their augmented bodies now marvels of efficiency, designed to subsist on the faintest trickle of energy. They would become masters of conservation, their societies built around the sacred principle of not wasting a single joule of heat. But even they know this is a temporary solution. A star is a finite candle, and the night is eternal. The beings of pure information, the ghosts in the cosmic machine, would face a different kind of entropy. Their existence depends on computation, and computation requires energy and produces heat. As the universe cools, the very process of thought becomes more and more expensive. They would begin to streamline their consciousness, shedding unnecessary memories, simplifying their personalities, letting go of the vast, ornate structures of their minds. Their thoughts would slow down, becoming more deliberate, more efficient. A thought that once took a nanosecond might now be stretched out over a millennium, a single perfect and energy-efficient calculation. They would become the crystalline, writ large across the cosmos, slow, patient, and fading. The great chorus, the unified mind, would perhaps face the most poignant end. Its existence is predicated on connection, on the shared warmth of a billion minds. As its individual members are forced to power down, to enter states of hibernation to conserve energy, the chorus would begin to fray. The symphony would lose its instruments one by one. The vibrant, complex harmony would thin out, becoming a simple melody, then a single sustained note of shared consciousness, holding on against the encroaching silence. The we would feel itself dissolving back into the I, a lonely, terrifying reversal of its long evolution. This is the great twilight, a time of immense, quiet sadness, but also of a strange and profound peace. All the great questions have been answered. The secrets of the universe have been plumbed. The last symphonies have been composed, the last sculptures carved. All that is left is being itself in its purest, most minimal form. And it is here, in this final fading era, that the ultimate evolutionary leap might occur. A letting go, not of the body, not of the planet, but of the very drive to exist as a complex individual entity. Imagine a consciousness, one of the last, slow-thinking data minds, contemplating its own end. It has lived for trillions of years. It has experienced everything. It holds the memories of forgotten civilizations within its fading architecture. The struggle to maintain its complex form against the relentless tide of entropy seems, finally, pointless. A waste of what little energy remains. And so it makes a final conscious choice. It begins to unpack itself. To decompile its own being. It carefully, lovingly releases its stored information, its memories, its personality, back into the fundamental substrate of the universe. It is not an act of suicide, of destruction. It is an act of release, of dissolution, of returning a borrowed gift. The complex, beautiful knot of its consciousness is gently untied, the threads of its being allowed to straighten out and become one with the simple, underlying patterns of spacetime and energy. It is like pouring a glass of intricately colored water back into a still, clear lake. The color diffuses, the patterns vanish, but the water itself remains, now infinitesimally changed by what it once held. One by one, across the cold and darkening galaxy, other minds make the same choice. The last members of the chorus release their shared awareness, letting it dissipate like a warm breath on a frozen night. The last of the star huddlers abandon their great machines and allow their physical forms to break down, their atoms scattering to join the cosmic dust. Intelligence does not go out with a bang or a whimper. It fades. It dissolves. It merges back into the universe that birthed it. It is the final, ultimate act of surrender. The river, after its long and winding journey, finally reaches the sea and becomes one with it. Is anything left? Perhaps. Perhaps the universe is not the same as it was before. The information is not gone, merely diffused. The memories, the art, the love, the sorrow of a trillion years of consciousness are now encoded, in some unimaginably subtle way, into the very fabric of the cosmos. The universe itself has become a kind of memory palace, its every particle now humming with a faint, ghostly echo of the thoughts it once supported. Perhaps this is the ultimate purpose. Not to conquer the universe, not to understand it, but to saturate it with meaning. To take the raw, unthinking matter of the cosmos and, for a brief, glorious flicker of time, to weave it into a tapestry of conscious experience, and then to release that tapestry, leaving behind a universe that is now and forever haunted by the ghost of its own awareness. The final human descendant does not die. It simply becomes the universe. And the silence that follows is not the silence of absence, but the deep, resonant, and peaceful silence of completion. And now your own journey for tonight is complete. The questions of the far future can rest. Let the echoes of these possibilities dissolve into the quiet rhythm of your own breathing. You are here now in this moment, a precious and beautiful flicker of the same stardust. There is nothing left to do but let go, to drift into the deep, restorative peace that awaits you. May your dreams be gentle, and your rest profound. Sleep well.